How do my eyes look? Okay. How do my eyes look? Okay. How do my eyes look? Okay.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, Dion. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
All right. Another day, another dollar. Ah. Have you been busy this last week?
Yeah, off and on. It's been pretty good.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, I saw one of your trucks towing a car into your place today.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, Councilmember Rocco. Good evening, good Councilmember Marks.
Hi, Ty.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Good.
All right.
That's good. So happy last day of February.
I know, can't believe 2 months has already gone by.
Yes. If you need anything, just call my name. I'm here. I'm just going to stop my video here.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Marie.
Hi, Marie.
Okay. Pictures look good. Everyone looks okay. We're already recording.
Mhm.
Okay. Carol, are you in a room that has a door?
Yes. Why?
Lucky. No, because I'm not. My office doesn't have a door, to actually close it off.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Oh.
I thought if you wanted for a quick escape or something. No, mine goes
Oh,
out.
no. No, I just was trying to picture the scene because my office is great. I mean, I love it. It's worked for me since 1996, in home, but that's because no one else is ever here during business hours. But ever since we've done virtual meetings and I've had to do them from home, and you realize that other things are happening in your house that you can't close the door. Yeah.
No, Ernie just had to replace the light bulb. I said, we'll do it now because if you fall during the meeting, I don't want them to hear you.
We'll hear it. Yeah.
Hey, folks.
Hello.
No, I'm in the kitchen area, so everything's open.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, Steve goes back to work in person tomorrow, March 1st. Cisco is taking people in person again. Yay.
After what, 2
Did I say
years?
that?
About a year and a half, 2 years?
2 years. Well, almost
Wow.
2 years. It was March 17th or 18th or something,
Uh-huh.
right? When they stopped. So about 2 weeks shy of 2 years. Yep.
Boy. At the time, it felt like the time was dragging, but it really flew by fast.
Well, I'm sure everybody feels differently. You know what I mean? It's just how it affects you. But I just remember it was supposed to be just for 30 days and then just till, yeah, I know.
That was a good strategy on their part, because I think if they told us it was going to be a year, we'd all have freaked. Because I know different people kept saying, no, they're going to keep extending it. They're going to keep extending it. And they did. But That was rough.
Yep.
Can't believe we're reminiscing about the good old days of the beginning of COVID.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
This is what we resorted to.
I guess so.
5:56, 4 more minutes. Okay.
Hey, everybody. Good evening.
Hello, Fred.
Evening.
Why are you're down so far at the bottom of your screen?
I know, I'm trying to figure this out. I was hoping I'd get taller, but it seems I'm getting shorter, so. Go
Put
figure.
your can you put your computer on a book or something? I don't know, like
Or,
that.
or maybe I need a booster chair. How's that?
I know. Okay.
Mayor Blankley,
Yes.
sorry to bother you, but we're having some technical difficulties with the IQ M2 encoder that displays it on the website, not on Zoom. Could you just give us like an extra 2-3 minutes to get that resolved?
Yep. Go
Thank you.
ahead.
Technical difficulty resolved.
Yay. And it's 5:59, so I've got 1 more minute, but is everybody here? I mean, council members?
The Vice Mayor Lira Munoz is not here yet, as far as I can see.
Okay. Well, wait a minute.
And Councilmember Hilton is here. Oh,
Mhm.
there's Vice Mayor Lira Munoz.
Okay. And Ty, you have a flag that you can put on our screen after I do the reading that I have to do first?
Yep, I have
Okay,
all of that ready for you.
very good. Oh, I forgot to ask. So it would be Councilmember Marks, will you lead us in the pledge?
Sure.
I'm going down the row. It was Councilmember Hilton last time. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I show 6 o'clock. Is it okay for me to call the meeting to order?
Yes, you can.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to enacted Assembly Bill 361. The city was previously complying with the Brown Act orders issued by the governor, which were aimed at containing the novel coronavirus and which expired on September 30th, 2021. This bill gives local agencies the authority to continue to host virtual meetings until January 1st, 2024, as long as California is under a governor-declared state of emergency. In order to continue meeting, subject to this exemption to the Brown Act, the City Council must make findings by majority vote every 30 days that the current circumstances have been reconsidered and that the state of emergency continues to impact the ability of members and the public to meet safely in person, or that state or local officials continue to impose or recommend social distancing measures. The City Council will consider whether to make these findings at least every 30 days until the governor lifts the state of emergency. City Hall is open to the public during regular business hours, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Monday through Thursday. The posted agenda states that the public may view the meeting online via live stream on Zoom and Facebook Live. The public has the option of participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom and may provide public comment during the meeting using the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you are calling in, press *9. The Zoom call-in information was provided on the posted agenda and on social media. All right, so at this time, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilmember Marks, will you please lead us?
Sure. Everyone stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America,
America,
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All
Thank you.
right, thank you. City Clerk's report on posting the agenda and roll call.
Yes, Madam Mayor, the agenda was posted on Thursday, February 24, 2022 at 12:38 p.m. Roll call. Councilmember Armandares,
Here.
Councilmember Bracco,
Here.
Councilmember Hilton,
Here.
Councilmember Lidro Munoz,
Present.
Councilmember Marks,
Here.
Councilmember Tovar,
Here.
and Mayor Blankley.
Here. Okay, orders of the day. I don't think we have anything, or I don't have anything there. Employee introductions. We don't have any. I'm assuming we don't have an invocation, right? I didn't mean to skip over that. No invocation.
Correct.
Okay, so ceremonial items, proclamations, awards, and presentations. We have three. I'm going to read the first one, which is proclamation proclaiming March as Youth Arts Month. Whereas the Council for Art Education administers Youth Art Month on a national level and thousands of schools participate. And whereas the Santa Clara County Board of Education has recognized March as Youth Arts Month and is committed to supporting the arts to inspire and prepare students for success in the 21st century and allowing them to develop as productive, contributing members of a strong community. And whereas we share the vision of ensuring that students have access to high quality arts education that is culturally relevant and inclusive in all forms as part of a comprehensive education that sparks curiosity, imagination, creativity, and joy. And whereas, according to the California Department of Education, fine arts are taught in almost 60,000 classes in Santa Clara County. Students have proven that arts learning strategies and arts integration help teachers to recognize and build upon critical thinking skills, curiosity, flexibility, communication, innovation, collaboration, and are the traits required for post-secondary and workplace success. And whereas each March arts education is celebrated in local schools, school districts, community arts organizations, and larger communities. Now, therefore, I, Marie Blankley, Mayor of the City of Gilroy, on this 28th day of February, along with my colleagues on the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2022 as Youth Arts Month. And is there anybody here for us to just thank or to mention from this, Ty?
No, I do not see anyone from there. at this
Anyone
moment.
present? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And the next one is proclaiming March as the Red Cross Month. So whereas the City of Gilroy has a long history of helping our neighbors in need, American Red Cross Month is a special time to recognize and thank our heroes, those Red Cross volunteers and donors who give of their time and resources to help community members. And whereas these heroes help families find shelter after a home fire, they give blood to help trauma victims and cancer patients. They deliver comfort items to military members in the hospital. They use their life-saving skills to save someone from a heart attack, drowning, and choking. They enable children around the globe to be vaccinated against measles and rubella. And whereas across the country and around the world, the American Red Cross responds to disasters, big and small. In fact, every 8 minutes, the organization responds to a community disaster, providing shelter, food, emotional support, and other necessities to those affected. It collects nearly 40% of the nation's blood supply, provides 24-hour support to military members, veterans, and their families, teaches millions life-saving skills such as lifeguarding and CPR, and through its Restoring Family Links program, connects family members separated by crisis, conflict, or migration. And whereas we dedicate the month of March to all those who support the American Red Cross mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. Our community depends on the American Red Cross, which relies on donations of time, money, and blood to fulfill its humanitarian mission. Now, therefore, I, Marie Blankley, Mayor of the City of Gilroy, on this 28th day of February, along with my colleagues on the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2022 as American Red Cross Month. And I know that Camille McCormick is the one accepting this proclamation. We're not going to do a formal speech here, but I just wanted to mention her name while we're here tonight. Okay. And then we have one more, and that is a proclamation for the retirement of James Trujillo. Whereas Jim Trujillo has served the city of Gilroy for over 31 years as a maintenance worker in the Public Works Department, Operations Division, retired on January 5th, 2022. And whereas in Jim's service as a maintenance worker in Public Works, he has been assigned to the Parks and Landscape, Street, Wastewater, Forestry, and Water sections where he maintained critical infrastructure throughout the city. And whereas Jim brought both pride and passion for his hometown community when performing his work, he applied his skills in education to protect and maintain public facilities such as parks, streets, water system, wastewater system, golf course, and trails. And whereas Jim provided excellent customer service to the residents and visitors of Gilroy, and also volunteered in the community with the Gilroy Little League and Gilroy Browns football programs. And whereas Jim accomplished many special projects during his tenure, to include the Christmas Hill Park Operations Manual, Christmas Hill Park Fire Camp Setup Manual, and assisting with the training of many new employees. And whereas Jim has been a reliable and valuable employee of the city of Gilroy, demonstrating excellence in teamwork, collaboration, and customer service, while maintaining a good nature and delivering positive results for the residents of Gilroy. Now, therefore, I, Marie Blankley, Mayor of the City of Gilroy, and along with my colleagues on the City Council and all the citizens and employees of Gilroy, join in thanking James Trujillo for his commitment of service and wish him well in retirement for years to come. That's a congratulations. Is Jim here by chance?
Mayor, he's not here tonight. He's celebrating in Vegas.
Okay. Okay. Moving on then. Presentations to the council, item 3. This is the public comment by members of the public on items not on the agenda, but within the subject matter. Oh, sorry, 3.1, that's the main title, but 3.1 is a presentation from the Gilroy Garlic Festival Association. We'll do that first. And that's going to be given by Jeff Spino, who's the president of the Garlic Festival Association for 2022.
Hello, good evening. Thank you. I can't turn my video on, but I can, hopefully you can hear me.
We can hear you. Yes, you sound
Good,
great.
thank you. Okay. Good evening. I am Jeff Spino, the president of the Gilroy Garlic Festival Association for 2022. Thank you for allowing the Gilroy Garlic Festival Association to present an update of the plans and progress we are working on for 2022. The Gilroy Garlic Festival has had a profound impact on the community over the last 41 plus years. Gilroy has become known worldwide for its annual festival, which has attracted over 3.8 million guests, directly contributed over $12 million to over 150 local charities, and contributed over $2.3 million to community improvement projects, including $500,000 for a City of Gilroy park expansion and $250,000 for the Gilroy High School cafeteria. It has also helped local partners like the Gilroy Chamber of Commerce, Gilroy Rotary, Gilroy Foundation, and others directly raise millions more to help support their efforts in the community. Significant sales taxes have been generated from local businesses that cater to guests before, during, and after the event. The event, as we have known it, is no longer logistically, financially viable due to escalating costs. For several years prior to 2019, the Festival Association has had to reach into its reserves to cover its costs and donations to nonprofits that work so hard volunteering. The growth to the areas surrounding Christmas Hill Park has been one of the biggest contributing factors to the increase in costs and loss of profitability, impacting the financial support given to the nonprofits each year. The board of directors have had to take a hard look at where we were as an association. We began the process of examining all aspects of who we were and what was needed to change to be able to continue. Our conclusion was that a venue that could hold a smaller, more intimate event and had a built-in infrastructure that could allow operations to cover over a series of days had the most potential of allowing us to continue and get back to our roots. In 2021, the Garlic Festival Association was able to hold 3 successful events: a farm-to-table dinner at a local winery, a golf tournament at the Gilroy Golf Course, and a drive-through food event featuring some of Gourmet Alley's famous recipes. For 2022, the association is planning 2 farm-to-table type dinner events, a golf tournament, and an in-person weekend event. With our 100% volunteer force, we believe we can give a sizable donation back to the nonprofits of Gilroy. With the largest day of our 2022 planned smaller in-person event being approximately 2,500 guests, which is less than 10% the size of our biggest Friday of Fast festivals, it is our hope that the Garlic Festival continue to raise desperately needed money for nonprofits while the impacts on traffic and reliance on city staffing and services will be very minimal. In late 2020, we examined the lower corporate picnic area of the Gilroy Gardens for the new Garlic Festival smaller format. It provides an intimate and secure setting nestled in the picturesque area of the gardens forgotten by time. It can be utilized to host a smaller format that celebrates garlic and allows the chance for our local nonprofits and charities to collaborate with us to help raise funds for their needs in community. Preparation and serving food and beverage would be in and around the large covered garden pavilion. This area is ideal since it's been used by Gilroy Gardens for food service for many years. It currently has screened-in food service area, ADA access, emergency exits, and all the utilities. We would utilize a pre-sale ticket method for guest attendance with the idea of selling out prior to the event to avoid extra traffic in and around the events. During our 2020 analysis, traffic and parking plans were developed and the event was discussed with Caltrans, Santa Clara County Roads, and Gilroy PD for traffic concerns. We are certain we can transform this area into a great Garlic Festival experience. It's a bold plan with many challenges, but when we come together as a community with the help of our association, our partners, our local charities, and our many friends in Gilroy, the mission can continue. The next step is to engage with Gilroy Gardens management and its board of directors to see if there's an opportunity for the Garlic Festival to have a live event on the lower area of their property. Gilroy Gardens is approved for use based on a total of 12,000 people per day. The 2022 overall Garlic Festival proposed attendance is 2,650, including volunteers, which is about 20% of the Gilroy Gardens total capacity. The other challenge that the Garlic Festival faces is in obtaining insurance, liability insurance acceptable to the municipal pooling authority requirements. We've obtained a reasonable insurance package based on the new size and scope for this live event and our other events. We have sent our insurance package to the City of Gilroy's risk manager and city manager, along with a detailed description of our event for their review with the municipal pooling authority in an effort to receive the pooling authority's approval. Time for negotiating and approvals is of great concern for us as it is now March, and we need to complete our planning as soon as possible. The legacy of the Gilroy Garlic Festival is the gold standard for nonprofits. It has impacted Gilroy and the surrounding communities for generations. Given the ability to continue this in a smaller, more intimate venue will ensure that it will endure for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, council, this is, we got time for Q&A. We scheduled 15 minutes for this, and so I asked Jeff to please leave time for that. So does someone want to start any questions? I know I have some too, but okay, Fred, why don't you, Councilmember Tovar, sorry, you go ahead and.
Thank you, Mayor. And Jeff, thank you for your presentation. Jeff, just sort of, and again, thank you all for the work that you guys have done and continue to do. You'd mentioned, the vision of possibly using Gilroy Gardens as a venue. Have you, as a board and association, met with the Gilroy Garden Board? If so, how did those discussions go? If not, why not? I'm just curious if you guys have all sat at the table and discussed sort of the possibility of hosting an event there.
Sure, thank you. We met with them in late 2020 and had an agreement, facility use agreement then with the general manager at the time. She went to their board at that time to get their approval, and they came back to her and told her that we needed to have approval from the city of Gilroy to lock in that agreement. So we were under the impression that we needed to get approval from the city of Gilroy before we go back to the Gilroy Gardens for an agreement.
Okay, maybe this question is for our city administrator. Jimmy, is that the case for the association to have a preliminary discussion with the Gilroy Gardens Board? Do we need to give them approval for that?
Well, for one thing, I don't completely recall what occurred in 2020. So basically, whatever happened at that time, I think we should assume that it needs to start over. Yeah. And so we've met with representatives of the Garlic Festival numerous times to chart a path on how they can get their project considered. And in doing so, we have had discussions with them about the insurance requirements, their need of approval from the gardens as well. But this gives me an opportunity to kind of point something out. Sure. In that the entire facility is leased to Gilroy Gardens. They are responsible for the operation, maintenance, and administration of that entire facility, which includes the picnic area. And so any use of their picnic area would have to be approved by them from an operational standpoint, so it doesn't impact their current, their current programming. Depending on that type of event, whether it has alcohol sales or live performance or items like that, would require a special event permit from the city. So It's not inaccurate to say that the city must have approval, but if the garden says, no, we don't want the event here at all because it doesn't work into our schedule or what have you, we would never get to the special event permit process. So it's not, none of us are really an island on our own, but really the first step is asking the board formally, do these dates and times work for you? And if so, what are you going to have at this event? Right. And then they would know if they had to get the approval of the city or not. But we are not the primary approval. We're not the first step. Right.
Got it. No, thank you for that information. But let me ask this question. And I believe we have a council member or two that are part of that board. But if the association is unable to meet with their board, I mean, I think that's the sense I got from you, Jeff, that there was a hesitation for them to meet with you. Could we as a city step in and say, well, hey, let's have this overall discussion. What's the issue of not meeting? And again, I'm not saying that they'll come up with the answers, but at least have a preliminary discussion and talk about sort of next steps or possible steps. So I'm not sure if that's an option that we as a city can take. I don't know. I'm just trying to see how we can move this along.
I certainly don't want to speak for the Gilroy Gardens board, but I don't know if they've been approached to meet, and I don't know if they've received a formal proposal. I think that's something perhaps Ms. Marks as a board member could answer, but I'm not aware of that at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Councilmember Hilton, who had his hand raised first, and then we'll come to Councilmember Marks. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Blankley. Jeff, thank you for being here. Can you just take like a minute and talk about the importance of volunteering and how the people that work the Garlic Festival, just sort of your history of volunteerism and how that brings back to how that funds local nonprofits?
Sure, thank you. Yes, I mean, the entire organization is volunteer. We don't even have an executive director anymore, so we are 100% volunteer based. Obviously, for the actual sort of work that's done to put on the festival and the different events, it's based basically on all volunteers from schools and school sports teams and dance teams and different church members, and they've typically all been essentially paid, I guess, what the organization's been paid based on the number of hours they've put into into the hours that they've been out there working. So that's how it's been set up for the last 40 years, where everyone who participates and helps gets money for their organization.
Awesome, thank you. I think that's just a good historical value for you to add. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep. Councilmember Marks.
Yes, I could answer Councilmember Tovar's question. At present, no one from the Garlic Festival Association has approached the Gilroy Gardens Board to talk about their plans, what they would like to do out there at Gilroy Gardens. There is no hesitancy on Gilroy Gardens' part to not meet with them. In fact, the board would welcome a conversation between them. All right, thank you.
Okay, does someone, I can't see everybody on my screen with the timer going. So just, yeah, I see Councilmember Tovar, I see your hand, but since it's the second time for you, I'm wondering if anyone else has their hand raised. No? Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you. And thank you, Councilman March, for that. Jeff, so I guess this question is to you because I've heard it twice already that there has not been any formal request from the association. And as Councilmember March said, who sits on the board, saying if they do receive requests, they would welcome this discussion, so I guess let's go back to you. I mean, have you guys asked for a meeting? Yes or no?
No, we have not. Again, we were under the impression we needed to have the approval of the authority pool in order to engage with the gardens, but we will be happy to reach out to them tomorrow and see if we can get something started with them as soon as possible.
Well, yeah, no, and I would ask that you do that because as Councilwoman March just said, I mean, and obviously she's speaking on behalf of the board. I mean, I don't see why they would not meet with you. And if for some reason that is untrue, then obviously then, we would need to know about that. But I think that they're willing to meet with you guys. And I think that first thing you should do is request a meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, if no one else has their hand raised, I'd like to say something too, because we all love, I mean, especially those of us who've lived in Gilroy our whole lives, know the Garlic Festival well, and we've all volunteered for it, and it's a big weekend, something we would all love to see continue. Jeff, I want to thank you for pointing out in your speech that issues of financial difficulty with the festival and reduced profits to all of the nonprofit volunteers and agencies, that was happening long before 2019. Once the land around Christmas Hill Park was no longer available for use for parking for the Garlic Festival and instead became developed with houses, that's when the Garlic Festival Association started using reserves year after year. And so it's not what happened in 2019 that is entirely responsible for this predicament. So I think it's important for the public to realize that. And then secondly, like Jimmy said, no one's on an island. So it's not that the city's insurance pool doesn't have some say in making sure that the city is being prudent, right? We're guardians of the taxpayers. We have an expectation in this, there is an expectation upon us in this pool to transfer risk for events that are not city events. And so in this lease with Gilroy Gardens is the transfer of that risk to the gardens for any events that they hold, which is why the first stop has to be the approval of the Gilroy Gardens board to take on that risk with the Garlic Festival Association. And then assuming you're going to be selling alcohol and amplified sound and those things that require a special events permit, then that of course comes to the city and it goes from there. But that's kind of where this goes. And lots of people have been talking because lots of people care and lots of people want to try to find a solution in whatever form this can take. But those are my 2 cents and my understanding of how things should go. So I want to thank you for being here tonight because this is information that is helpful for all of us to hear at the same time. Councilmember Tovar, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, Mayor, if I may, thank you for those words. And I think many of us feel the same way. Jeff, over the last week, and again, as you can tell, we're very passionate about this and also concerned about this. But I've been reading that Fresno is sort of looking to do a Garlic Festival themselves. It has me a little concerned because Gilroy Garlic Festival has been around for many, many years, and I would hate to lose it and have somebody else pick it up and sort of take it away from who we are. And as Councilmember Hilton mentioned, I mean, we have hundreds, if not thousands of volunteers that have participated over the years. And I guess for me, I'm hoping that the Gilroy Garden Board will meet with you and sort of have open discussions, because I honestly, I don't want to see this go away. And I think the more that we are kept aware of, I think in the end, I think I or we or whomever, I mean, can assist in whatever way we can possible. So again, those are just my comments, and I'm hoping that there will be some active discussions with you and the Gilroy Garden Board. Thank you.
Okay. Then, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you for the time and the opportunity tonight.
Right. Okay. Item 3.2. This is a public comment for items not on the agenda. Public comment portion of this meeting for anyone who wishes to make comments related to items not on the agenda. If you are participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you are calling in, press *9. So at this time, I'd like to pause and ask the city clerk how many hands are raised.
I do not see any raised hands at this time, Madam Mayor.
Okay. And no *9s.
No *9s, no
Okay.
written public comments
All
to
right.
receive beforehand
Okay,
either.
then we move on. Thank you. All right, reports of council members. Councilmember Bracco.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Councilmember Armandaris.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to note that tomorrow, March 1st, marks Women's History Month. It's 2022, and I think it's important that we still celebrate the contributions of women locally, nationally, and internationally. Even though it is 2022, 42% of women still face gender discrimination at work, with an average of a 16% lower or pay gap, as it's called, or as it's recognized as. 1 out of 3 women will experience sexual violence in one form or another in their lifetime. 27% of, we only represent 27% of Congress, 24% of the Senate, and 26% of our California state legislature. So, and then every day, even to this day, we still continuously, our rights to our own bodies are being attacked. So I think for this, we must always continue to recognize, value, and lift up the voices and the equity of women, their contributions to our country and our world. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Marks.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Well, we have bragging rights for Gilroy Gardens. Out of 180 amusement parks and 9,200 audits worldwide, Gilroy Gardens took first place internationally for ride safety, beating out some of the big names like Cedar Fair. Out of 110 employees nominated worldwide, the gardens had 5 operators that took top awards. It's nice to know we're in good hands when we're riding those rides out there at the gardens. On March 26th, Gilroy Gardens is hosting Gilroy Appreciation Day, where Gilroyans get in free with proof of residency. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Hilton.
Thank you, Mayor Blankley. From Visit Gilroy California Welcome Center, we received results of the Visit California Visit Gilroy Co-op campaign with Expedia that happened last October through January. The performance summary included the following: 747,000 impressions, 450 room nights booked, gross booking fees of 61,700, and a 4.2 return on ad spend. Visit Gilroy staff attended Go West Summit in Reno in mid-February, meeting with 37 domestic and international tour operators and media representatives to pitch Gilroy as a destination. Visit Gilroy staff attended the Visit California Outlook Forum in San Francisco, February 13th through the 16th, and Visit California reps from 13 international venues reported on their global market profiles and quarterly updates on travel intent, airlift, consumer sentiment, and other indicators for the 13 targets markets for the upcoming year. From Silicon Valley Clean Energy, the board of directors authorized the Joint Powers Authority to implement a rate change that would keep SVCE customers at a 1% discount to PG&E rates effective March 1st. This rate discount has been the same for customers for the past couple of years and aligns with the agency's commitment to maintaining rates competitive to PG&E. The discount is inclusive of PG&E's added fees. Since launching in 2017, SVCE has saved customers $77 million on their electricity bills. The SVCE Board of Directors voted to enter a contract for 69 megawatts, 552 megawatt hours of long duration energy storage. The project can deliver clean energy for 8 hours a day, helping provide relief to the grid during critical peak times. This groundbreaking announcement has made national headlines across the energy industry. It marks the first major procurement milestone for California Community Power and a new joint powers agency comprised of 10 CCEs, which SVC is a part of. SVC's CEO and staff were instrumental in forming the new agency and leading the review effort for long duration energy storage project proposals. The board also approved its ad hoc committee assignments for the year. I will be on the legislative ad hoc committee to address legislative and regulatory response, and Gilroy finance analyst Vicky Rahman will serve on the audit committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any report. I just want to send my prayers out to the citizens of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Councilmember LaRomagnosi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You and I both had a chance to attend the Mobility Partnership meeting last week on Wednesday. As everyone knows, this is a coalition of Santa Clara County elected officials and San Benito County elected officials as we meet to discuss common issues of transportation infrastructure between our two counties. A couple of interesting things that came out of that meeting. One is that VTA and Caltrans are thinking about ultimately extending the express lanes that you see in San Mateo County all the way down through Santa Clara County through Gilroy. Now, these are the new lanes that you'll probably see like around Palo Alto, where you have to pay a certain fee and there has to be a certain number of occupants. So it's different than the traditional high occupants vehicle lanes that we're all used to. This is something that is very early on in its conception with VTA and with Caltrans, but it is something to keep in mind. When that was raised at our mobility partnership meeting, several of us had some concerns about that, considering the fact that we already have some tightening of our roads as you come down through the hourglass through Morgan Hill. So this is an issue the mobility partnership will be considering going forward. Additionally, another issue that came out of the discussion that we had on Wednesday dealt with work that's going to be done on Santa Teresa and how that's going to impact our local roads, especially Mesa Road and Castro Valley Road. So as we have these continued meetings every other month, we'll be getting routine updates from VTA, from Caltrans, from others as to what the impacts are going to be. Now, just to be clear, nothing's happening right away, but it is something that's being planned for. So the mayor and I are keeping an eye on things. And in addition to that update, let me just thank the mayor for filling in for me as an alternate on the Cities Association meeting a couple of weeks ago. I had a work obligation that evening, so thank you, Mayor, for doing that.
Thank you. I will report on that too. So yes, on the mobility partnership, yes, I'm happy. The Santa Teresa extension, that's something that we're actually going to be working on with our staff and all that soon. I wish the correction of the bottleneck was something that's happening soon, but I'm afraid that's way far away, but that is definitely on the radar to be adding a lane, HOV or otherwise, from Cochrane to 25, especially because the improvements to 25 on 101, those are happening. So we're on it as best we can be. Yes, at Cities Association, the two big things that were discussed there that I would like the council to know about are VTA governance. That's going to come back. You might remember Assemblymember Mark Berman brought this forward last year. I think it was early last year, and then tabled it. He's still interested in bringing it back. He's asking Cities Association, which is all the mayors or members of the City Association, to help with ideas on how to make that change. Something's got to change, but how? And the other thing at Cities Association is local control over land use and zoning. That is a big topic with all of our cities that we're going to be watching very closely. On the VTA Policy Advisory Committee, the only action item was that we did recommend approval to the VTA board, which that meeting is happening this Thursday, to go ahead and approve VTA's updated Chapter 10 of the Bicycle Technical Guidelines, which covers bicycle parking. So that recommendation moved forward. Okay, future council initiated items. Does anybody have anything here? Councilmember Marks, you raised your hand. You're on mute.
I thought I unmuted myself. Okay.
Okay.
I would like to propose for a future council meeting, we discuss passing an ordinance addressing drive-throughs next to residential housing. I know we cannot do anything about the recent building on First Street, which is next to housing, but we can make it our first and last project of this nature in Gilroy. Recent studies have shown respiratory problems in children living next door to a drive-through. This is a problem we can correct to ensure the health and safety of our citizens, young and old. So what I'm asking is for, if this gets approved by the council right now, staff to bring back a report on banning any drive-throughs through next door to residential housing.
Okay, so Jimmy, do you want to help us understand what that means for staff time? This is where I always go for myself anyway with these kinds of requests.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it could take many forms, but the form that I would recommend is giving council an update on what the current rules and regulations are concerning drive-throughs near residential areas, and then taking council direction after that if council would like to explore amending that or modifying it. But I think the first step is just getting everybody aware of what our standards are, if that's acceptable, Ms. Marks.
And that would be fine with me. I just didn't know how to really word this.
Okay, right. And if we did that, there's no urgency. This could be something that comes back in 4, 5, 6 months, right?
We typically put them out, about that time frame, so we don't move anything else off. So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is we have a lot. Okay, so then council members, just show me a thumbs up if you want to
Mayor.
support. Oh,
Sorry, Mayor.
I can't see your hand. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, as long as we're not discussing the
Yeah.
issue.
Oh, no. Again, I support Councilmember Marks' request, but Jimmy, in the report that you're going to bring back, will it show the number of drive-throughs that we currently have and locations, east side, west side of Gilroy? I'm just curious to see where sort of the breakdown of what we currently have right now. And I know it's different than what she's asking, but it'd be nice to see where we're at currently, if that's okay.
I think that's doable. To be honest with you, I don't know what scale that is. I've never really paid attention. But yeah, we'll give it a shot. We'll do that.
Yeah, that's all I asked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. John was coming on just to save the day too. Okay, so need to see thumbs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's unanimous. So, all right, that goes on a future agenda. Okay, consent calendar. Does anyone wish to pull or remove an item from the consent calendar?
Mayor, I'd like to pull item 6.3. And if nobody else wants to pull anything, I'll go ahead and motion the approval of the 6.1 and 6.2.
Okay, does anyone else want to remove anything? Okay, then we'll remove 6.3 and we have a motion to approve 6.1 and 6.2. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote for 6.1 and 6.2 then.
Councilmember Armendariz?
Yes.
Oh, wait. Don't I have to ask for public comment?
Yes.
Yes, you
Sorry.
should. Yes.
Sorry. I'd like to open public comments. Is there anybody who would like to speak on item 6.1 or 6.2 on the consent calendar? If you are participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, use the raise your hand feature. Otherwise, if you're calling in, press *9.
I do not see any raised hands at this moment, Madam Mayor.
Oh, okay, thank you. So closing the public comment and let's go ahead and vote.
Councilmember Armendariz?
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco?
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Leader Munoz,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar,
Yes.
and Mayor Blankley.
Yes. Okay, that passed unanimously. So is there a discussion that you wanted to have on 6.3 or just a separate vote?
Well, a separate vote, but also, I wanted to make a statement about it as well. So, thank you to Councilmember Leroy Munoz for drafting these new norms and the mayor for calling the last special meeting for discussion. I think it was a good open discussion. While there are some norms I can agree with, many of them make it prohibitive for me to engage with my constituents and advocate on their behalf. I've spoken with many constituents over the weekend who oppose these norms. And so it's for those reasons that I won't be supporting this item tonight. Thank you.
Okay, so
I'll make a motion to approve.
terms are just that, prohibit anybody from doing what they need to do with everybody needs to behave in order to be on the same field. And it's, I'll let Councilmember Armendariz speak first, and then we'll just take a vote.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Hilton spoke to constituents. I spoke to representatives from other elected representatives over the weekend. I was able to meet up with a number from our area and outside of our area. And the norms that we discussed aren't normal for other areas. And I think using words like behave and those, we're all adults, we're all elected to this body. And I agree with Councilmember Hilton that they make it prohibitively difficult to engage our community and engage members of our community in a way that shouldn't be considered normal. And like I said, like a lot of other electeds don't consider normal. So I won't be supporting this.
Okay, are there any other comments?
I'll make a motion to approve.
You should ask for public comment again on this item.
That's correct, sorry. Yes, so back to public comment. Ty, anybody with a *9 or a raise your hand?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do see two raised hands. I have Joanne Fierro and Maria Aguilar. Give me 1 second so I can set up the share screen for the timer.
Very good. So with only two, that the timer can be 3 minutes. Okay, who is speaking first?
Yes, Madam Mayor, my screen is going haywire at the moment. Sorry about this.
Oh, sorry.
Technical difficulties, I apologize. All right, that would be Joanne Fierro. Go
Okay.
ahead, please.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for hearing me on this issue. I feel very strongly about this. I work very hard in the community. I work with lots of different diverse groups. You need a lot of communication out there. I know I've talked about this before. I feel that these norms are not consistent with other cities. I've done some research. The way they're worded is rather like a parent to a child. They are not very professional. I would really like to see them rewritten at least in a professional way. And the language in them is kind of demeaning. I don't think that it behooves our city to treat our elected members in this way. I feel very strongly about that. I have a pretty good idea that most of the people that I know voted in the election this last time in 2020 might feel the same way that I do. I appreciate the fact that we have members reaching out to different groups in different ways. And I think this nitpicking of how they do it is very, very sad. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Maria Aguilar. Give me 1 second, please.
Mhm.
Ms. Aguilar, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I don't know. I don't know of any other body where a representative is shunned from speaking their own opinion when something has passed. You mentioned, I think, at the VTA that you felt that you had indicated that the council had voted or had not voted. I forget what the issue was, and that everybody should have been in agreement with you. And I disagree with that. I think that you're trying to restrict their freedom of speech, their freedom to reach out to the rest of the residents. Many don't attend the meetings. These people work late. By the time they get home, take care of their children, they don't have time to sit here on a Zoom meeting. Some of us are retired and are able to do so, but we still need representatives that can reach out to us and tell us what's going on. I realize that you're unhappy when 4 or 5 or 10 show up to have their voice on something, but that's the right of our citizens to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I do not see any raised hands, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So it's back to council. I'll remind everybody that the wording of the norms was what we discussed at our last meeting. And what you see in your packet is what was discussed by the majority as far as how the wording goes. Does anyone else have any other comment before? Well, we have a motion by Councilmember Bracco, is that right?
Yes.
But Madam
Okay.
Mayor, may I make a quick comment?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I want to thank the people who raised their concerns this evening. We appreciate the feedback. I'm going to respectfully and gently push back. I think these are norms. That's exactly why we call them norms. They're our best effort at encouraging the respect that we should show each other, that we should show members of the community. And they're not meant in any way to be condescending or anything like that. It just simply is an opportunity for us to say, we believe enough in treating each other with respect that we want to capture that and write that down. That was the intent behind this. I know some of you might see it differently, but that was solely the intent. We had an opportunity a couple of weeks ago to discuss this. No alternative language was raised at that time. So I think that's the reason why we're going to vote on these norms. It's exactly the respect that we want to capture. We don't leave respect to chance. We want to capture that. That's why it's important. That's why I'll ultimately support the norms. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Motion, was there a
And
motion?
I'll second, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Bracco, seconded by Councilmember LaRomagnose to adopt the norms as suggested at our last meeting and as in writing now in our packets. And so that is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Armendariz,
No.
Councilmember Bracco,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton,
No.
Councilmember Liro Munoz,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar,
Yes.
and Mayor Blankley.
Yes, okay, and that passes 5-2. All right, thank you. Item 7, bids and proposals. 7.1, there are none. Public hearings. 8.1, tentative map and architectural and site review permit for 4-lot subdivision at 395 Lewis Street. And Cindy, are you here to give this report?
Hold on, I'm trying to get my video going.
Oh, it is Cindy. Okay. Yay.
Good evening, everyone. The proposed project requires tentative map approval by the City Council and was unanimously recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. The project also requires an architectural and site review permit, which could on its own be approved by the Community Development Director, but is being reviewed holistically with the parcel map approval. The project site is bounded by Lewis Street to the south, Chestnut Street to the east, and Upper Middle Slough to the west. The project site is surrounded by residential uses, and San Ysidro City Park is located approximately 700 feet east of the project site. The project would subdivide an existing vacant 1-acre lot into 4 fee simple single-family residential lots where each lot would be developed with a 2-story single-family home, and 3 of the lots would each be developed with a detached accessory dwelling unit. The proposed 4-lot subdivision, site layout, and architectural design is also consistent with the general plan and the zoning ordinance. The project is exempt from CEQA since no new significant impacts would be created that weren't already analyzed in the general plan EIR or otherwise minimized through existing development standards or project level conditions of approval. And you can see the color palette here. On Friday, staff received 1 comment from the general public, and today staff received comments from Councilmember Hilton. Staff has provided a written response to all comments that should have been provided to you, and I will briefly summarize staff's response to those comments here. With regard to architectural design, the city does not have adopted objective architectural design standards for single-family homes. However, staff always works with an applicant to try and achieve the best design project possible within the limits of the law. The massing for this project is primarily broken up by the incorporation of both gable and hip roofs, 2nd-story balconies, recessed garages, and 2 color palettes. Furthermore, 24 trees will be planted on the property to help minimize privacy impacts and provide an attractive visual aesthetic along the front, rear, and sides of the existing vacant lot. With regard to a homeowners association, unlike a large condominium or townhome project that shares ownership interest in a common space or facility, the fee simple lots do not require an HOA. With regard to frontage improvements, the applicant will be responsible for making frontage improvements along Chestnut Street. This includes widening of Chestnut Street by 24 feet to accommodate a new travel lane, bike lane, and parking lane. The improvements on the subject property will also include a landscape strip and sidewalk. With regard to the bike lane, pursuant to the city's trails master plan, the project frontage will include a new Class 2 bike lane. With regard to utility undergrounding, the project will underground the overhead utilities along the project frontage. The applicant would not be required to underground utilities for surrounding residents. That responsibility would fall on the owner applicant of those properties at the time of redevelopment. A request was made for a crosswalk at Chestnut and Lewis. However, installation of a striped crosswalk at an uncontrolled crossing on Lewis would not be sufficient, and a highly visible crosswalk with a rectangular rapid flashing beacon with associated curb extensions is estimated to cost between $50,000 and $75,000 and would likely exceed the legal nexus for street improvement requirements associated with a 4-unit project. However, if desired by the council, engineering can include such an improvement in the CIP during the current CIP project update process. And then finally, with regard to vehicle miles traveled and transportation demand management, a project of this size would not exceed the city's VMT threshold. TDM measures such as car sharing and transit passes would not be associated with a 4-unit subdivision with individual fee simple lots. However, the request has been passed on to the applicant who is here this evening. As provided in your staff report and the resolution of approval, the project meets the findings of approval for both the tentative map and the architectural and site review permit. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the project. This concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. We also have John Bix, Interim Community Development Director, and Gary Heap, City Engineer available this evening. And as I mentioned, the applicant is also here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Okay, we'll start with council member questions, and then I'll move on to the second. So I see Council Member Armendariz. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Cindy, for the report. You mentioned in regards to the crosswalk that the $50,000 to $75,000 cost for a raised and lit crosswalk would likely exceed the cost that can be required. How can we get an I mean, I'm sure it's an educated guess, but how can we get that total? And then what would be the procedure for us to ask the developer to actually put that in? You mentioned a CIP.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let Gary Heap, city engineer, respond to that.
Good evening, council. Good to be with you this evening. Happy to answer those two questions, Councilmember Amaderos. In terms of the value or the amount, I was really looking at the recent project we did in front of Gilroy High School, where we did a high visibility crosswalk, as well as a rectangular rapid flash beacon. That project came in with a bid of $75,000. A little bit less of an improvement here, maybe some less, not as many concrete improvements would be needed for the crosswalk, but we're still looking at a range, especially with the escalated costs that we're seeing now, anywhere between $50,000 and $75,000 at a minimum for an improvement like that. It would be difficult to put a crosswalk in without the RRFB, or the rectangular rapid flash beacon. We could look at stop control, but it's so close to the adjacent intersection at Forest, which is stop control, that would be difficult.
Yeah, my concern, I'm sure you know, is because it's a block to a park.
Yes.
It's a couple blocks to a school that has terrible traffic issues at South Valley.
Absolutely.
And the prep school, or the charter school that we have there. And then it's already a high traffic, high pedestrian area with, we saw that our neighbors and our friends at Nueva Vida just asked for parking control. And so, although there's going to be, you said there's going to be a widening to 24 feet of Lewis Street.
Yes, there is.
Would that mitigate some of the costs for the crosswalk, for an improved crosswalk? Would that be?
The widening itself is going to be along the frontage of the development, which, looking at a map here, would be on the west side of Chestnut. If we were to do a rectangular rapid flash beacon with the crosswalk, we would want to do it on the east side of the intersection to limit the amount of turning movements that would conflict with that crosswalk. And so it's basically kitty corner from the project across the intersection.
So the improvements will only be on the west side of it.
That's right. That's correct. We're maintaining the curb line along the east side and widening on the west side.
Okay. Yeah, it's of high concern to me. So I'm wondering what we can do about traffic, parking, and of course, pedestrian traffic there to keep it safe. There's a lot of kids walking through there all the time.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Marks.
I have a concern about parking because these homes are very, very large. And they have 5 bedrooms, 6 with the ADUs and the 3 of them. And they have 4 full bathrooms, which leads me to believe that these rooms are going to be rented out. And if they are rented out, you're looking at 6 to maybe 8 or 9 cars per household, going up to 36 cars. I drove the area Friday night, and that whole area is just packed with cars. And I don't know if we're being fair to the neighborhood to put in a minimum probably of 25 cars. I truly believe I saw in the report where they figured 3.7 people per house. Nobody builds a house with 5 to 6 bedrooms, counting on just 3 people living there. So that's my concern. I feel we have a moral obligation to the neighborhood. And I know SB 9, basically is promoting the housing, and the developer has followed all the rules that he's supposed to. But I'm really struggling right now. I would have felt much better if maybe one of the houses was not built and they had on-site parking, just to alleviate all the parking that is needed out there. So, okay.
Thank you. Yes, John, did you want to respond before I continue?
Yeah, I'd be happy to provide some information about that to the council. The projects do provide the on-site parking that our code requires. So it has the 2 garage parking spaces, plus it has the driveway in front of the garage spaces, which technically could get about 4 vehicles on the site itself. And then with the street widening, we do have opportunities on street to provide some additional parking spaces, possibly 2 additional parking spaces in front of each dwelling unit, which could accommodate, we suspect, the folks that we expect to be living in a residential arrangement such as this. So I think per our codes and regulations and policies, we have addressed the parking demand that we are forecasting. So we're expecting that it'll be addressed appropriately.
All right, we shall see once it's built.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Hilton and then Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. So can somebody talk about the pole that's for 341 Lewis Street? And you talked about how the developer will underground everything in front of them, but how does that reconnect back up to that pole, to that older home that's going to be their neighbor? That's my first question.
So when we do, may I go, should I go ahead and answer that, John? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, go ahead.
When we go ahead and do require the developer to underground, Councilmember Hilton, what we do is we look at the frontage of the project. When we get to the property line, typically what happens is if it continues overhead, PG&E will have to put a new line, pole in, and then to raise that utility back above ground to maintain it in its current alignment above ground.
So so you're saying that there'll still be a line there won't be a line in front of this. Well, actually there is a line in front of here, right? Because the pole only goes one. So you're going to underground, but there still has to be a line up there because it has to connect to 341 Lewis. So there's still going to be a drop in front of this project.
341 Lewis has a connection that makes it basically connects to the overhead in front of 341 Lewis. I don't believe it connects in front of this development. If it does, it's going to have to provide or connect with a new line or connection to the new overhead or the realigned overhead, if you will, in front of that property.
That's my point. I think that that's what's going to end up happening because that they draw their power from across the street on Lewis. So when you cut this, they're going to have to find it somewhere else. But obviously that's not our problem. So I want to talk about the crosswalk really quick. The Chestnut is on a planned, what they call a planned pedestrian network, right? So it's pedestrian oriented street. It's called out to be to receive a higher level of pedestrian oriented amenities, both that public and private can be a part of. So what I'm asking is that they're putting in 6-foot sidewalks, street trees, park strip, street lights, all that's awesome along the frontage. Is that what we are considering a higher level of pedestrian oriented and amenities? And if that's it, then okay. But I think it would be great to be able to, there probably won't be development here for a long time, to somehow be able to connect with that crosswalk across the street. So is there a way somehow that we can form something so the developers impact fees will pay for part of it, and then the public participation in that would be coming from us, obviously. So that's my comment. But question was, is this truly the highest amenity that we're asking for, or can we go even higher?
The council can request whatever the council would like to request. This is our standard for residential communities to go ahead with a city standard sidewalk, which is a 6-foot sidewalk adjacent to a parking strip. If it was in a commercial zone, we would probably go with a little bit wider sidewalk, maybe even up to 10 feet. But for residential developments like this, we feel 6 foot is adequate.
Okay, so my final comment, and then we can move on, is just, this is supposed to be an enhanced pedestrian network. It's called out in the general plan mobility for that. So us just doing the standard, in my opinion, is not enough. We should go higher, which is what our general plan is calling for. Thank you, Mayor.
Madam Mayor, if I could comment
Yeah,
just
of course.
briefly, because we were taking a look at the geometries for Chestnut Street, especially where the pedestrian and bicycle bridge comes in and ties into Lewis Street. And it was interesting when you take a look at that arrangement between where that ramp to that pathway ends and its relationship to Chestnut Street as it goes to the north. Its alignment is really more in line with the sidewalk on the eastern side of Chestnut Street rather than the western side of Chestnut Street. And I think just looking at it, I'm suspecting that the planning was to keep that pedestrian and bicycle movement out of that intersection simply because it would be a safer place to have pedestrians and bicyclists cross at that point. Because if you were to have this sidewalk or this crosswalk on the western side of that intersection, you would be putting pedestrians and bicyclists in in a lot of vehicle movements and traffic movements. I don't think it's quite as safe, but as Gary said, we can go back and take a look and examine how this fits into the CIP. But I believe the intent was to keep folks on the eastern side of Chestnut Street, just simply because of the geometries that we've seen out there and looked at. And I think that'll be worth exploring a little bit further in the future. And one thing final to point out, this project is paying traffic impact fees, I think in the amount of right around $49,000. So that'll be used to help circulation improvements in the city as well.
Thank you, John. Okay, Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. Cindy, Gary, and John, thank you for your report. And you know, I'm in line with several of our my colleagues here when we talked about the concern regarding traffic, especially for pedestrians. You know, and I'm looking at the report here, and for me, again, I'm on the fence with this because, again, I think that's a huge issue. And you know, you did mention that the applicant is joining us, and I would actually like to hear from them and regarding our concerns, because right now I can't vote in favor of this because of those concerns. But again, I would like to hear from the applicant and what their thoughts are.
Okay, council member, your concerns are, what do you mean? The same thing, the crosswalk?
The crosswalk, I mean, just the impact of traffic, and you know, we talked about pedestrians and sort of the danger.
Okay, let me get through Councilmember Bracco, and then I want to go to ex parte communications, and then we'll come back and see if the applicant would like to respond. Okay, Councilmember Bracco?
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Tovar. These are big houses, and they're going to have a lot of kids. They're going to have to walk to Elliott School, and you know, a kid's a kid. They're going to take the shortest route that's directly straight. They're not going to make a turn and go down to Forest Street, and then come back. So if we can't get the crosswalk, I'm a no vote on it.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so let me go. Councilmember Armendariz, I do see your hand, but I'm going to wait since you've already spoken. I'm going to go to ex parte communications. I'm going to ask the applicant to speak, and then we'll do a second round with council members. Okay, so number 2 is disclosure of ex parte communications. Would each council member please disclose if they've received or partaken in any that means communications with anybody having to do with this project? Anyone? No. Councilor Armendariz, are you responding? No. Okay, so that's no ex parte communications. Okay, so if the applicant is here and would like to respond to some of the council members, this would be the time. Otherwise, there'll still be time for that. I can still move on to other questions and actually the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I did see the one raised hand, but now it's gone. Is Kui Shun there?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that the applicant?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead. Mr. Shun?
He's on mute. You're on mute still.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Mayor, and
good evening.
Regarding to the crosswalk that you just mentioned itself, I already done a lot of study about this one, and look into internal pattern of the traffic, especially on pedestrian. Based on existing itself, across the street from the Chestnut Street, right at the corner there, basically we already have an ADA handicap ramp right there. And just across from that to the other side of the street, we also have another ADA ramp right there. And on our proposal at the northeast corner of our lot, we also propose another ADA ramp. I think there's a possible crosswalk to be provided. And we don't have any objection to it because on the Chestnut Street, most of the street will be repaved with the widening of the street itself to the standard standard street. So I don't think that's a significant work when the work being carried out. So if the council decide on it, we will go ahead to connect that ADA ramp to the other side of the street. for the crosswalk.
Okay. Does that answer the council members who had questions for the applicant? Do you have another question for him, or can I go to the public and then back to council?
Can we just clarify what type of crosswalk we're referring to?
Okay, council members who are talking about the crosswalk?
The crosswalk that I'd like to see is the high visibility one that was mentioned earlier.
Yes, I agree.
I would agree with that as well.
Is that may I ask if high visibility, the one that was just put in at Gilroy High, is that the same as what's on Monterey downtown? Like when you cross Monterey Street? Are those
sort of
one where it lights up on the ground?
They both they both light up, but there's the one at the high school looks like a more thing.
Yeah, the one at the high school has more protections for bicyclists and pedestrians. It's got rumble strips. It's got all these like barriers to walking directly, right, for shortcuts, and more caution like for drivers.
Okay, so Gary and Cindy, those are two very different crosswalks then, the one at Gilroy High and the one across. So Cindy, you still need to know which crosswalk they're talking about, right?
Well, I just want to make sure if the applicant is proposing to put in a sidewalk that we know what type of sidewalk they're committing.
Crosswalk, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, crosswalk.
Well, if I may interject,
Yes.
is it the crosswalk or the crosswalk and the rectangular rapid flash beacon? Because the high visibility crosswalk is just a different paint technique on the ground. It does a high visibility crosswalk doesn't typically mean the RRFB. So if we're going to want both, I would requesting both.
Gary, RRFB is
Rectangular rapid flash beacon.
Okay.
Which we have in
That's
front of
what-
Gilroy
that's
High
what we
School, and
want.
we have
Yeah.
at the mid-block crossings in our downtown.
That's what I would love to see there. I think the neighborhood is.
Okay, so
the
that's
neighborhood-
what, right. So we'll need to see if there's a majority of the council that's agreeing with something like that, and if the applicant even wants to consider it. Okay, Councilmember Hilton, did you have a comment?
I have a clarifying question. So Gary, I agree with you 100%. We don't we don't cross them from the west to the east. I get that, right? So the bike ped bridge is connecting more on the east side. So
That's correct.
So I'm not even clear what we're asking or what the applicant really wants. So we're saying that to put in a rapid flashing beacon from the bridge, right? Connect it on the east side, because there's going to be a future bike lane there anyways. How are the kids that Dion's talking about, how are they going to get from the front of their house and cross over Chestnut to get it? That I think we need to talk about that, because if there needs to be a crosswalk there, and now we're talking about painting one and doing a rapid flashing beacon on one, right?
I think I would recommend the rapid flash beacon for the Lewis crossing, and just a high visibility crosswalk across Chestnut to get east to west across Chestnut on the north side of Lewis.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that's clear with everybody, and hopefully the applicant understands that too of what we're all asking here. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Bracco.
Yes, that's what I would envision, one on Lewis Street, because not just this project, but all the apartments and everything around the park, they all walk that way to school. So Lewis Street.
Okay, so Cindy, that's clear for what you need, right? When I say what you need, what I mean is to understand what some council members are asking of the applicant. So is this the time to ask the applicant to respond to those particular kinds of crosswalks? And if that's what he meant when he was speaking earlier?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So go ahead, Mr. Sun.
Yeah, my intention to put in a crosswalk, we're thinking of the one is straight on the road. It's not the kind of rapid flashing beacon type, because this is more like into a residential community. It's not compared to like downtown of Gilroy. So I did envision the beacon needs to be at those locations.
Okay, so if I understood you correctly, a painted crosswalk, but not with the lights.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. I think it's time that I open the public hearing to let the public say something on this, and then we can come back for council discussion. We've now clarified what it is, what kind of crosswalk that the applicant is referring to, and it is a crosswalk, but not lit, not a lit crosswalk. Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. It is 7:16. 3 minutes allowed per speaker. If you are participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, use *9. Ty, do we have any speakers?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have two speakers. And one is the applicant, Kui Shan. Actually, now we're down to up to three. The second is Jonathan Fox, followed by Carolyn Schmandel. Please note that we did receive one written correspondence from Jonathan Fox this past weekend, and it was sent to council as well.
Okay, so right now we have a total of how many speakers?
Three.
Okay, that's fine. 3 minutes. Okay.
All right, give me 1 second so I can change the screen. Mr. Shun, go ahead, please. Please unmute if you still want to talk, since your hand is raised.
He may have just forgotten to lower it.
Okay, I'm going to reset the clock.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Fox, go ahead, please.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Jonathan Fox. I emailed in a comment letter midday Friday. My apologies to you and to staff for getting in late. It took a while for this project to get on my radar, as I live outside of the notification radius, and actually my primary residence is outside of the city. However, my family has lived here for many, many years in Gilroy, and I intend to contribute what I can where I can. My letter touched on two things: the architectural design of the single family residences and the planned class 2 bike lane on Chestnut Street. For the design, I understand Gilroy does not have design guidelines nor objective standards that apply to SFRs. However, this is still a conversation worth having, and the applicant may be agreeable to studying a few modifications prior to the issuance of a building permit. I think this is a unique circumstance. One, because the project is for a subdivision, so a much bigger ask than one single family residence on a lot. Two, it's adjacent to single story residences on every side. And three, it has high visibility to Lewis Street. Lastly is the planned bike lane / crosswalk as shown in the city's general plan, well, the bike lane. Development, as you know, plays a significant role in obtaining the infrastructure and facilities that a city envisions. And I would like the council to continue to discuss, as they have already, in requesting the developer to pay into a fund for the implementation of a crosswalk connecting the bridge to Chestnut Street. I think that's great that a portion of the council is supportive of that move, but I would caution against designing the crosswalk in the meeting. I think what would be a better solution would be continue the item to the next meeting, so that the applicant can connect with planning staff and the public works director to better understand the crosswalk, as well as allowing the applicant to maybe get in contact with a consultant to get a quote on what that cost would be. Again, the project being a subdivision, fronting being a subdivision and fronting a substantial portion of Chestnut Street provides a better argument to request this in this case. In conclusion, I'm supportive of the project, but there are a few modifications that could be made to provide for greater public benefit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
That would be Carolyn Schmando. Give me 1 second, please. Ms. Schmandel, go right ahead.
Okay, great. Can you hear me okay? I was having trouble with my sound system. I had to switch over. Oh, darn. Hang on just a second. I gotta
Your clock is going, just so you're aware.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Hello?
We can hear you. We've been able to hear you from the beginning.
Awesome. Yeah, but I had echo going here. Got a problem with my computer. I don't have much to say, I don't think, because of the discussion. I just wanted to say it's wonderful there's going to be a class 2 bike lane. And I also am concerned about the issue of the street crossing because of the 2 schools that are close by in San Isidro Park. So I just wanted to put in my say as a citizen for having a enhanced crosswalk there. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker.
There are no other public speakers at this time, Madam Mayor.
Okay, well then let's bring this back to council. I know I have comments too. Does anyone else have something they want to add who hasn't spoken yet? Okay, I'm going to add my 2 cents in this because I appreciate all of this discussion, but this is housing. This is housing that we need. It's a lot of housing. I'm happy that we get to impose the parking restrictions that we do, because this is not something that's coming under SB 9. So we can have not just the garages on the driveway, but the widening of the street and require a certain number of parking. I agree that crosswalks should be there, but I don't see why they need to be commercial like crosswalks. I think in that residential neighborhood, in that exact neighborhood, simple crosswalks suffice. So that's really all I need to wanted to add to the subject, and I will leave it to the rest of the council if you have any more discussion or if anybody wants to make a motion.
Madam Mayor, before you go, could you close public hearing?
Sorry, yes, and I just was looking 7:22, so maybe it was 7 o'clock. Close the public hearing, and it was call it 7 o'clock because I was just speaking. Is that all right?
I think it was around 7:21. What was the last comment? So that was the close of the public hearing.
I'm sorry. Yes, 7:23, and I meant to subtract 2, and I just 7:21.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I see Councilmember Bracco and then Councilmember Armandaris. Councilmember Bracco?
Yes, I wanted to make a motion that we approve the project with the added crosswalk. I don't care if it has the light, but we have an enhanced crosswalk there. Thank you.
Okay, wait, so enhanced means?
The bright green
Okay, the
paint on the
paint.
ground.
It's paint. It's not light, but paint. Okay. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Bracco and seconded by Councilmember LaRomanos to include an enhanced crosswalk that does not have lights, but that is with paint. Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because we
yes,
didn't.
I see two hands raised, but then we do have the motion on the floor. So yes, go ahead.
Councilmember Bracco, you're referring to 2 crosswalks, right? The crosswalk for them to get out of their house and cross over Chestnut and then cross over Lewis to the bike bridge. Is that what you're saying? So that's 2. I just want to make sure that we're clear on those conditions.
I'm talking about a crosswalk across Lewis Street. If staff believes there needs to be another one, then I would leave it up to them.
Yeah, if we could get maybe a little more discussion from staff, the experts on traffic flow and people flow, that would be awesome. To Gary to chime in on why we need 2 crosswalks and we don't cross like that.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Hilton. My recommendation would be for 2 crosswalks, one north to south on the east side of the intersection and one east to west on the north side of the intersection.
Then that's my
With just
motion.
paint. Okay.
And that would be
That's your motion?
high visibility crosswalks, yes.
Okay,
And I will continue to second.
very good. Okay, and Councilmember Armandaris, you had something to add?
No, if that is Councilmember Bracco's motion, then that's what I needed to know.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion and a second. That we've had the public hearing, and this is to adopt a resolution approving the tentative map to subdivide the property located at 395 Lewis Street into 4 parcels with the two crosswalks mentioned. So that would be a roll call vote.
Aye.
Ty?
Yes, sorry about that. On mute. So I was making sure we have the motion from Councilmember Bracco, a second by Lidra Munoz with the amended items, correct?
Yes,
To the
two
resolution.
what are they? No, enhance. What were they called? What was the term?
High
Enhance.
visibility. High visibility had the different paint.
Okay.
Our RFBs had the beacon.
Okay. Two high visibility crosswalks.
Thank you. All right, I'll take the vote right now. Councilmember Armendariz,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Lidra Munoz,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar,
Yes.
and Mayor Blankley.
Yes. Okay, unanimous. All right, and then we have part B is another motion to adopt a resolution approving the Arc and Site permit to allow the construction, blah, 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 blah. Do we have a motion for that?
I'll motion for that. And I just want to make sure that this is actually written into the conditions of approval, the inspection of these crosswalks by the city engineer.
Yes, I will work with the engineer on the how that is worded and put it in the resolution.
Mayor, I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Hilton and seconded by Councilmember Tovar to adopt a resolution approving an Arc and Site review permit to allow construction of the 4 two-story single-family homes at 395 Lewis Street, following approval of the tentative map file number TM 2001 to subdivide the property into 4 single-family parcels. All right, roll call vote.
I have a question, a clarifying question before we go in there. This might be for Andy. Are TIFs that you collect from developers, are you allowed to instruct that those stay within that community at that property, or are you not allowed to do that? Like, we have $50,000 coming from him into TIF. Are we not allowed to keep that TIF money there at this property or in that intersection?
To get, yes, thank Councilmember
Sorry.
Hilton to the chair. I'll defer partly to Gary, but generally TIF goes into the citywide traffic fund and then is spent on a list of city capital projects rather than being allocated to one specific intersection or one specific development area.
Okay, my next comment before we go into roll call is would just be a wish list. Gary, if you could keep that TIF money into here, split it half and half, and use the CIP for the public-private partnership to enhance this pedestrian network in front of there, I think that'd be a great win. Thank you, Mayor.
I think we are ready for the roll call.
Councilmember Armendariz,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Lidra Munoz,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar,
Yes.
and Mayor Blankley.
Yes. Okay, that was a little awkward, that last comment, because I don't know that the rest of the council really had a chance to give an opinion. So Councilmember Hilton, I heard you giving direction to Gary Heap, but that's not how it works. So it's okay. I know you wanted to make your comment known, but that
It's just a
wasn't-
comment. It was not direction. It was a comment.
Sounded like,
I'm
yeah.
allowed to say a wish list. That's fine.
Yeah.
That would
but
not
it-
be part of the, not technically be part of the
No,
motion.
it's not part of the
Correct.
motion.
It was not part of the motion. It was part of the discussion.
I know.
Thank you.
So let's try to keep it out just before we're voting, since it was not part of the motion. Exactly.
So there's no discussion after a motion is on the floor?
No, that wasn't discussion about the motion. That was something separate from the motion. That's what we're just saying. So it's okay. It felt awkward to me. So I'm just asking that when we're about to take a vote like that, and I've already done it, that unless it's something to do with the motion, that we keep it to where we can all be chiming in on something. I didn't want to elongate a discussion that should have already happened. All right, moving on to unfinished business. There is none. Item 10, introduction of new business. This is an ordinance to mandate electronic and paperless filing of Fair Political Practices Commission campaign disclosure statements. And our city clerk, Ty, is going to be giving this report.
Yes, Madam Mayor, just give me 1 second so I can set up the PowerPoint presentation.
Mhm.
And share screen. Good evening, Mayor and council members. We are here tonight to discuss about agenda item 10.1, introduction of an ordinance to mandate electronic and paperless filing of Fair Political Practice Commission campaign disclosure statements.
All right, can I ask you to enlarge the presentation a little bit, if possible?
Sure. It's actually full screen on my end here. Let me see if I can stop the full screen here.
If not, don't worry. Yeah, if it's too difficult.
Do you see it now?
There you go.
It
Okay,
looks good, Ty.
thank you. All right. So going to the background here. So the city of Gilroy is currently a paper filing agency for the FPPC campaign disclosures, your Form 60s, your 470s, your 497s, et cetera, that you normally do when you run a campaign, and you always file your semi-annual 460s with the city clerk's office. So government code section 84615 provides local agencies may mandate electronic filing for FPPC disclosure statements. This will help increase the efficiency for campaigns and city staff and promote transparency. Oops. E-filing will eliminate the need for wet signatures, will redact the statements posted online automatically, and will automatically link directly to the FPP system. So basically, as a city clerk staff, we do not need to not only upload the documents up to the website, it actually goes to the FPP servers as well. So we don't have to do multiple works at once. If approved, all filers will be required to submit their statutory filings through the automated system, and for paper filings will no longer be accepted except for rare circumstances. And in the case of like if there's your internet, it went down at your house, or I'm still able to accept those things. That's not an issue from that perspective. I can still upload it into the digital web portal then when we provide it. Analysis, the adoption of the proposed ordinance is required to implement the electronic filings of the campaign finance component. City will be using NetFile to host the FPP's campaign system, which is currently hosting our city statements of economic interest Form 700, and have technical expertise for and necessary compliance to handle the FPP's campaign statements. With regards to the Form 700s, although it's not required to have an ordinance, staff recommends that all designated filers also be required to file electronically in order to be in alignment with the city's transition to electronic paperless filing pursuant to Government Code Section 84615. So the staff recommends to waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance to mandate the electronic paperless filing for Fair Political Practice Commission campaign disclosure statements and statements of economic interest. And I'm happy to answer any of the council members' questions.
Thank you, Ty. All right, council members. Councilmember LaRomanos.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just real quick, Ty, I agree with the intent behind all this. My only question has to do with the campaign statements. Some of them, there's a more frequent reporting and they have to be done within a certain kind of time-bound period, especially as you get closer to the election. Will city staff continue to be available should there be any kind of tech issues or things like that?
Yes.
I know that in the past, every once in a blue moon, I run into some of these challenges with whatever, with whatever browser I'm using. So will city staff make itself available as a resource should that be needed?
Yes.
Well, that was a quick answer. Okay, well then I'll take it then. All right, we'll hold you to it, Ty. Thank you.
Good to know. Anyone else? Okay, then I'm going to go to public comment. Ty, do we have any raised hands or star nines in the queue?
I do not see any raised hands at the moment, nor do I see, nor did I receive any public comments prior to this.
Okay, then I would like to close public comment and looking for possible action.
Motion to accept staff's recommendation.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Okay, the motion was made by Councilmember Armendariz and seconded. Who went first, Tovar or LaRomanos? Okay.
Peter.
Okay. Okay. Roll call vote.
Prior to that, I'm just making sure that we're waiving the first reading and introducing the ordinance, correct?
Right. Item 3.
Thank you.
Staff
Thank you.
That will be understood as being the motion, yes.
Okay. Councilmember Armendariz?
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco?
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Lira Munoz?
Yes.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar?
Yes.
And Mayor Blankley.
Yes.
I'll
All
go
right,
ahead and
that
read
was-
this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead. I was just going to say that that's unanimous. Go ahead.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Gilroy adding Article 14 to Chapter 2, the Gilroy Code, to mandate electronic and paperless filing of Fair Political Practices Commission campaign disclosure statements and statements of economic interest.
Okay. Do we need another?
I'll move approval.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Romagno's. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Armendariz seconded, and roll call for that.
Councilmember Armendariz,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Libra Munoz,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar,
Yes.
and Mayor Blankley.
Yes, that's also unanimous. When does that become effective?
It becomes effective 30 days from the passing of the ordinance, which is going to be
Okay.
the next council meeting is March 7th. So basically
Soon.
April soon.
Okay, yeah. All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 10.2, social media use policy. And Rochelle Bedell, our community engagement manager, is going to be giving us this report. Hi, Rochelle.
Hi. Okay. All right, I should be sharing my screen now. We have for you tonight the social media use policy. Currently, the city is operating without a social media policy. And this policy would guide the city in its efforts to communicate with the community on social media. Staff has reviewed social media policies and best practices from over a dozen local cities and counties to prepare a draft and the draft policy that's being brought before council today. In general, the social media use policy establishes a set process for requesting and administering official social media sites for departments and legislative bodies. It also establishes regulations for the setup and governance of official social media sites. In addition, it establishes a set process for responding to posts, comments, and messages on official social media sites. It also establishes standards for the use of social media by city officials. Now, city officials includes both elected and appointed officials within the city, and these standards follow those previously discussed with legal. So conversations that you've had with Andy Faber in the past, this basically echoes those conversations. So A, the city does not create or provide support for individual accounts for city officials. There needs to be a clear separation for official and personal accounts. C, to avoid Brown Act violations, city officials may not communicate directly with other members' social media accounts. And D, the policy identifies requirements about the content on city officials' social media accounts. And then lastly, the policy establishes guidelines for personal use of social media by employees. Staff recommends approval and adoption of the social media use policy, and I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Rochelle. Right, council questions. Okay, I don't know who was first, Councilmember Armendariz or Councilmember Hilton. You guys want to duke it out? Okay, Councilmember Armendariz.
Yeah. Can we see Rochelle's first slide with the list of changes or with the policy details?
Yes, hold on just a minute. Let me pull that back up again. Okay, let me go back. Oh, I didn't like that, sorry.
It's
I'll try
okay.
that again.
My question just is the prohibition of interaction between council members. Does that include their personal or only their official or city council social media pages?
So let me look at the policy itself to get the wording for that. And maybe we can rely on Andy as well.
Yeah,
so
maybe I could step in because it really relates to the conversation we had at the retreat about social media usage. And if, for example, you have a purely personal site that we talked about where you do not discuss city business, but you communicate with families and have birthdays and things of that nature. In theory, on a site like that, you could communicate with council members. However, the Brown Act, of course, restricts your official sites and says you can't discuss city business with other council members. You can't like, retweet, comment on each other. So the danger is if you use any social media site to communicate with council members, even though you think it's a personal site, if somehow the discussion strays into city business, somebody could argue that now you've merged and you've blended the identities of your sites, and therefore you don't really have a personal site anymore. That's the danger. So I've given you the theoretical answer. The practical answer would be it would be better not to communicate with other council members on social media sites at all because of that risk.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hilton?
Thank you, Mayor. So if I'm creating my own council member page that I use to interact with my constituents, right? It's got my government email address, says Councilmember Hilton on it. If I potentially block somebody or delete a post because I did not like what they said, that under this policy and the Brown Act, there's a possibility that I've violated their First Amendment rights. So does this, how far will the city try to look for those posts if somebody asks for them, or if somebody has a lawsuit? What kind of potential lawsuit would happen to the city if those public records can't be accessed because I just deleted them? Would it just sort of go away and nothing would ever happen? Or how does that happen?
Well, we talked again at the retreat about that issue. It's a tricky issue because what the city would do is ask you to find those records. They're not in the city's possession particularly, but you may have the ability to retrieve them through Facebook or some other medium, or you may not. But the Brown Act does say that if you block members from using the site, it's not only potentially a First Amendment issue for them, it's also potentially a violation of the Brown Act. And that's one of the tricky things about the Brown Act amendment relating to social media. So the advice is always not to block people, and that can lead to unfortunate consequences where some of the cases we talked about at the retreat, where in fact you have a heckler, for example, on your site, it can be difficult to deal with. And certainly people can be blocked for violations of protocol of the organizations, for example, a Facebook protocol, or for reasons that are content neutral. You may recall one case we discussed, a court said it was okay to block somebody for repetitive posting. They were critical of the fact that that person was blocked for 3 years, and the court felt that was excessive. But the repetitive posting problem, posting hundreds and hundreds of emails, was an acceptable reason for blockage. The problem is, it's kind of like my previous answer, though, that if you block somebody for some kind of behavior and they're going to allege it's because of the content of what they said, and you block them for that reason, and that creates the Brown Act problems for your site.
Okay, so would it be safe to say that if somebody is being belligerent to us, or they say something that's completely offensive, to be able to screenshot it, save it, somehow capture that public record of something that you think is wrong, and then bring that obviously to the city's attention so that they can keep that as a public record, since these council member, created Facebook pages are public record. They are an extension of us from the government.
Well, except the city is not maintaining your pages, though. The city is not going to maintain sites that are run by individual council members. I would say taking a picture and keeping a record of it yourself is a very good idea. I'm not sure Rochelle wants or needs to have copies of that, because these are not official city sites. If it happened, for example, on the planning, let's say the planning commission sets up a site under this policy, and their process is in the policy where it could. If they maintained the site, for example, and they blocked somebody, that would be a site that's run by the city, an official city site. And that kind of site, in fact, your comment about keeping the records of it would be a good idea for the city to do.
Thank you.
I apologize for convoluted answers, but these are convoluted situations.
No, but Andy, what I think you are helping with is that, again, it's that distinction that is very hard for those of us who get elected between who we were before we got elected and who we are after. Is, you know, even though we are elected, our Facebook pages or whatever it is you do, even as your own personal elected site, is still not a city site. That's still you.
Right.
Right.
That the distinction was always there. It's just gotten harder to maintain in the age of social media.
Okay, I'm seeing no other hands raised with the council. I'm going to see if we have any hands raised with the public. Ty, do we have any raised hands or star nines showing up?
I do not see any raised hands at this time, Madam Mayor.
Okay, then seeing none, no audio comments. I will close public comment and ask if there's any action or further discussion.
Do you need a motion?
I need a motion to approve staff's recommended,
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
And I'll second, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so a motion by Councilmember Bracco, seconded by Councilmember LaRomanos to approve staff's recommendation to adopt the social media use policy.
Councilmember Almaderis,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Lero Munoz,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar,
Yes.
and Mayor Blinkley.
Yes. All right, that passed unanimously.
Can I make a
10.3.
very quick comment? I want to commend Rochelle. This policy went through many drafts and a lot of time was spent on it. And I think Rochelle did a great job.
Thanks. Thanks, Rochelle. Okay, item 10.3, council discussion of housing trust fund fiscal recommendations and adopt a resolution amending the operating budget for fiscal years 2021-22 and 22-23 in the Los Arroyos Fund in the amount of $100,800 in each fiscal year. And I think Bryce is going to, there you are, Bryce, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Should be seeing this slide at this point in time. So tonight's presentation is on the Housing Trust Fund fiscal recommendations and a budget amendment for the Los Arroyos Fund. To give you a little bit of background, back in October of 2021, staff presented a fiscal
Bryce,
health.
if I may stop you for a second,
Sure.
your PowerPoint presentation is showing your notes.
Okay, let me see what's going on here. Let me try this one more time.
That was going to allow us to cheat, Ty.
Okay, try this again. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So we catch up. So as I mentioned, in October 21, we presented a report on the fiscal health for the Housing Trust Fund. And in that report, we had identified that the fund balance and cash are slowly being depleted. This is due primarily to ongoing operating and personnel costs, as well as the public service grants being issued from the fund. Council issued direction at the end of that report to bring back options to address the fiscal health. And so one of the items that we uncovered as we kind of went through is the volatility and status of equity share payments that we'll talk about here momentarily, and how volatile and the fact that they're not guaranteed. First, starting with the loans. The loans have a long-term repayment structure. Included in the staff report, it was a table that identified that 70% of the interest and principal receivables are not due for another 40 to 50 years. We do have 5 small residential loans that do make payments regularly, but the others typically do not make interest and principal payments, are not required to until, like I said, about 40 to 50 years. So long repayment scheduled time. Additionally, the equity share payments, like I mentioned, are not guaranteed. As we look through the information that we secured from House Keys, we looked at the resale restriction agreements, or RRAs. Most of them, nearly all of them, actually 30-year terms. So if, let's say, a a homeowner that has this RRA on their property stays in a home for 30 years, doesn't sell it, doesn't transfer it, they are no longer required at the end of that term to provide any equity payments to the city. Based on the schedule of the RRA expirations, I'm looking at a third of the current RRAs expiring each decade or the next 30 years. Due to the high uncertainty of the equity share payments and the fact that it's not guaranteed, it's put some variability possible from our earlier projections. So it's possible that we may end up depleting faster, or it may take longer to deplete as well, purely dependent on how home sales are going and the number of homes that might sell or transfer before that 30-year term is reached on the specific house. Because this, we have developed about 11 options for council, and tonight we're recommending 2 for council to take action on this evening. The first one is the use of the permanent local housing allocation funds to be used for the public service grants. As council member, we entered into at the end of last calendar year, a consortium agreement with Santa Clara County to operate and to administer our permanent local housing allocation funds. These are funds that are basically handled similar to CDBG funds. So they're regulated by Housing and Urban Development. And the county is working with HUD right now on the details of how we would process these public service grants. But we did contain them in our consortium agreement. And so we are allowed to use funding allocations for public service grants. What they're trying to figure out is whether the funds would pass through the city or if the recommended public service grants would go directly to a contract with the county. This would save potentially between $100,000 to $170,000 per year, depending on the public service grant awards. As part of this recommendation, staff is recommending that to fund the public service grants at the $168,000 historical amount for both fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 to be funded through the PLHA. So for the allocations for 2019 and 2020, we're looking at about $592,000 in allocations. If we fund the full 2 years of the public service grants, that would leave $256,700 for other housing programs like safe parking, emergency rapid housing, or whatever the programs that council decides. The allocations for 2021 would be applied for by the county this upcoming fiscal year to be received in fiscal year 24. The amount is not currently known, and that amount would be in addition to the $592,000 mentioned previously. Fiscal recommendation number 2 is to shift Houseke's contract proportionally across both the Housing Trust Fund and the Los Arroyos funds. And this is the reason for the recommended budget amendment. As we looked at the different restricted resale agreements, 48% of them are actually associated with Los Arroyos developments and should be, the cost for managing that should be absorbed by the Los Arroyos Fund. The Los Arroyos Fund only receives revenues from equity share payments, and there are no ongoing expenditures in this fund, unlike the Housing Trust Fund. So the costs will be split across the funds to ensure that the county is fair and that the costs are distributed based on the actual allocation of restricted resale agreements that the Houseke's is monitoring. Effectively, this would move just shy of $101,000 in fiscal year 22 expenses to the Los Arroyos Fund, and then 48% of the remaining contract for fiscal year 23. And then that ratio will be adjusted based on any homes where the equity share payment is paid, or if anything reaches term in that time frame. Additionally, there were some other options for the Housing Trust Fund that were identified, and these options can be considered during the next budget cycle or the legislative agenda for the council. One is grants. We can increase the priority of housing grants over potentially other grant funding requests or needs from the city. Again, that's a prioritization that we would ask council to weigh in if that's a higher priority than say public safety or fire. Number 4 will be revising the lending forgiveness. So again, currently the equity share payments are forgivable at the end of their term. We'll be looking to potentially revise that or consider revising that for any future lending that's given. Additionally, 5th would be revising the loan payment structure to instead of having all the principal and interest deferred to the very end, instead allow a small amount to help cover the cost of managing and maintaining that loan through its term. 6 would be to council to adopt the inclusionary housing ordinance. This is something that council is already working on. And one component of that is to the ability to pay in lieu fees. Clearly, the preference is for them to actually build affordable housing, but that is another option as well for those fees. 7th is creating linkage fees, typically 2 types. There's the commercial and the residential, but this would involve a nexus study and would also need to be evaluated against any possible impacts to development. 8th would be to move the personnel and operating costs to the general fund from the housing trust fund, so that the funds would purely be just for issuing out new either loans or below market rate investments. 9th would be an alternative to that, would also be to have a general fund contribution each year from the housing trust fund to be returned by council as part of the budget process. 10th would be creating a multifamily affordability restriction monitoring fee. San Jose instituted this for the costs for monitoring their multifamily housing that have affordability agreements on them. And that is some of the work that House Keys is currently doing with the contract. And then finally, the tax increment financing district. This is a little more controversial, simply because it's involved essentially assigning growth in property taxes to housing as opposed to the general purpose of the general fund. And then the additional concerns as far as the implementation costs and workload in order to develop the tax increment finance district. So this time, staff is recommending that council adopt the budget amendment for the Los Arroyos Fund in the amount of $100,800 for fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23, in which case the charge for the House Keys contract would then be proportionally spread across both the Housing Trust Fund and the Los Arroyos Fund. And then secondly, direct staff to utilize the permanent local housing allocation funds for the public service grants up to the normal annual amount of $168,000 for the next 2 years. Again, subject to council discretion when it considers those applications for that funding. This would have annual savings in the Housing Trust Fund between $201,000 and $271,000. That completes the presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Bryce. I'm going to start by, on that slide right there, the second bullet point, direct staff to utilize. That's not in our agenda to do, is it? Am I missing it?
No, it'd be, we would then proceed to bring back to council the formal action. So this is really just getting direction that council is agreeable to this. Again, it also depends on a combination of things. So this would come when council considers the public service grants. So typically what would happen, the Housing Neighborhood Revitalization Committee is considering the applications in March in order to form a recommendation to council for award. When that comes to council for determination, we would then be providing this as an option to council to allocate the funds to the PLHA instead of directly to the Housing Trust Fund.
Okay, Councilmember Bracco.
Bryce, back when we did this deal with South County Housing, when they were here at the time, we were assured that not only was it going to be self-sufficient, it was actually going to generate income that would go towards helping other first-time home buyers. So did something happen to affect that, or did they just sell us a bill of goods?
Honestly, I can't attest to what South County Housing was designed. I think there's a couple of challenges. One is you have ongoing operating costs that are in there. And so in and of itself, if left to its own devices, it was used purely for a revolving fund, that's possible. But then I think at some time there were decisions in the past, likely because essentially then the general fund would then be paying the staff to manage that program instead of the Housing Trust Fund managing it itself. So again, I don't know the decisions that were made in the past when the portfolio was originally given to the city, but I think the challenge is the operating costs that are recurring inside the fund.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other hands raised, I'm going to go to public comment, and well, now I see a hand raised. Okay, Councilmember Armendariz.
Thank you for that, Mayor. I thought I had pushed the button. So I appreciate the work on this, Bryce, and I'm wondering which of these options will allow us or give us enough money and leeway to support projects like if we wanted to be part of Project Home Key or some of the other state programs or federal programs to build housing. Would this, would the staff recommendation have any restrictions about that?
As far as the two that are being recommended tonight, no, I don't believe so. The others, we'd have to examine the requirements of different funding sources to find out if there's any limitations on those. And that's one of the reasons for the extended time frame. So we're asking for the two tonight because they don't affect outside operations. It's purely an internal matter as far as budget, authorization, existing funds that the city has. All the other options will require some more, some more analysis, more in-depth analysis in order to determine, where we might have, good functionality and at the same time, no conflicts with outside funding sources.
And then what can you tell us about our neighboring cities and the type of linkage fees that we've seen, especially where there's healthy development, commercial and residential?
Yeah, so there's, we do have a couple of other cities that have, in the county that have the linkage fees. So a couple of them, I've identified San Jose, Mountain View, Sunnyvale, Cupertino, Palo Alto, Menlo Park. There's some others in let's say Oakland, San Francisco, et cetera. The rates and the amounts vary by each city, and then also which ones apply. Some have commercial, some have residential, some have both. So it's really a kind of a mixed bag as far as what works for that particular community.
Okay, and is that also true of a inclusionary, of the fees for inclusionary housing ordinances?
Unfortunately, I don't have, I didn't look into inclusionary housing ordinances as far as the amounts, just because that's a process. I know that community development has already started underway, and I'm not sure what information they might have, but we can look into that and see what research is present.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to public comment. And Ty, I'm going to ask if you see any hands raised or any callers calling in.
I do not see anyone at this time, Madam Mayor, nor did I receive any public comments prior to the meeting.
Okay, seeing no audio comments, then I'm going to close public comment and come back to council. This is where I'm struggling, Bryce, because my agenda doesn't have the two things that you asked for in your slide. So, well, Councilmember Hilton, your hand is raised. Why don't you go ahead?
It does have one of them, excuse me. It does have adopting the resolution on item B on the agenda as
Right.
a possible action.
Right, I see that.
Right. And then as the other things, it's only a matter of giving direction to staff if you choose to give them any direction at all on this issue.
Okay, it's just different than what the slide showed, so that's why I'm, okay. All right, Councilmember Hilton, you had have a comment.
Yes. No, I was confused too, because I could have sworn over the weekend I read more of those options that were on this agenda, but I don't know. I don't know where I saw that or didn't see that. So I would say that one of the main reasons why the Housing Trust Fund is in the situation it is, and just like Mr. Bracco said, he was sold that it was going to be a certain way, is that you have to actively manage it. And I think that you will see a turnaround, Councilmember Bracco, now that we have House Keys actually actively managing this. And we have the partnerships now with Destination Home and others that are out there that have this for-profit side and nonprofit side where they can go out to private places and get money that we can't do. And at the same time, they have the skills and expertise to find old rehab homes to be able to bring it to the below market rate. Kudos to Jimmy for getting that PLHA money, for showing up at that meeting and getting the seat at the table. That was huge. And that's that was the direction that this council gave by endorsing the community plan and homelessness, is to start showing up to those meetings. So just for general direction, just to start it off, I am supportive of pulling those, using that PLHA money and not drawing down the Housing Trust Fund out of there. And then I don't remember what the number 2 was that you had up. Oh, it was the Los Arroyos Fund. So yes, I'm in agreement with that as well. I'll start the conversation off. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess there's just the item A is receive, report, and provide direction to staff. So that's the one I'm struggling more with. B is easier for me. Maybe we'll do B first. Does somebody want to make a motion to adopt? Oh, Jimmy, go ahead.
Mayor, I'm going to try to clarify a little bit. The direction is one of the recommendations is that we consider using the PHLA money, but we haven't asked council exactly how to use all of the money. So if we get the direction when we return on how to use all the money, we'll already include part of that for the Housing Trust Fund. So we'll make that real clear when we come back with the PHLA, but all we're looking for right now is some direction for that returning item. And then the second one, of course, is the budget amendment to utilize the Los Arroyos Fund.
Okay, then Councilmember Hilton, do you want to make a motion to that effect for item A?
A was just a direction to, right? So my direction, and if everybody agrees with it, would be to use the PLHA money specifically for program services. Pull that out of Housing Trust Fund to use that. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Jimmy, is that the same as what you're saying?
It is, but there's a second step that you can't do tonight because we don't have the full recommendations for the PHLA. But when we do, we'll include what Councilmember Hilton just suggested as the first part of that.
Okay, so the direction is just to use the PHLA money.
Exactly.
Okay.
What,
seconded by Councilmember Tovar, and then I'm sorry, Councilmember Armendariz, what'd you say?
A friendly amendment if they'd accept that we include in the direction information about adopting an inclusionary housing ordinance and the residential commercial linkage fee.
I'm okay with that.
Wait, hold on a second. I'm in agreement with that, but that's already being looked into by community development, though, isn't it? That we don't have to.
I thought so, but it's on this list of recommendations or options, rather.
Can we clarify that's not
Sure.
already happening?
No, and so in the yes, Mayor, Council, the item is in the staff report listed that this is something that is actually currently underway with the community development is leading that charge on that. So the recommendation for that option was to continue pursuing that as a viable option to augment this.
Both of those.
The inclusionary housing ordinance is included as being conducted. The linkage fees has not been initiated aside from the research for the staff report.
Correct.
Okay, I'd like both if as part of my amendment.
I'm sorry, I'm just confused because I don't know how I would vote on something like this. I don't support the linkage fees, and going that route. And so it's very confusing to me to understand what we're trying to do with this item A tonight. I understand B. I'm not understanding A because it's not in writing for me to understand what it is, what direction we're giving.
I'd like,
So
I guess what I'm asking for is that.
No, I understand. I understand what you're asking for. I'm saying that's not in the, I'm not clear what staff is already doing or needing to change. I understand what you're asking for. That's not the clarification I need.
So what I was going to say is that what I'm asking for is that staff bring back a study or information to us on what creating linkage fees, both residential and commercial, would look like and cost and generate. That's what I'm asking for.
Right. And since I don't support that, I would have to vote no, even if I support everything else.
Right. So, but mine is in the form of a friendly amendment. And so.
I understand what you're saying as long as staff understands what you're saying, and I'll accept that. Does staff understand what she's saying?
Well, I think as I understand it, we are recommending two things, and that is the use of PHLA money. And then second is the budget amendment. Anything after that, it would be something that we are currently not recommending at this time, but it is an option for council to provide staff direction to. So basically, in a nutshell, you're doing a council initiated item of the list of options we've given you. So that's how I see it, is that council would be agreeing to do basically a council initiated item off the list that we provided you.
So let's try it. I'll accept the friendly amendment. And like Jimmy just said, this is all this is that you will bring it back. You will include it. We're looking for ways to build up our housing trust fiscal health. And that is one option. So, okay, let's try it.
Okay. Councilmember Tovar, are you still seconding that?
Yeah, I'm still seconding that.
Okay. So I wish we would separate those two, but if that's not what the maker of the motion and the seconder want to do, then I'm just gonna be a no vote. This doesn't make sense to me. I'm still unclear as to what we're saying, because I can't see it in writing, and it's just uncomfortable for me. I don't understand what I'm voting for. So maybe somebody could repeat the motion other than me, since I don't know what it is.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
So the original motion was to, Zach's was to accept the recommendation. No, it's part A, right? So it is the council to give direction to staff for part A, and then to include for the restructuring of the money or the redirection of the money. And then what my recommendation was, or my amendment was, is to include staff to bring us back direction, to bring us back information about creating a linkage fee, because the staff is already working on an inclusionary housing ordinance.
Correct. And Mayor, this is not committing you to making a decision on it or not. This would just be, rather than us waiting until next year to add it onto the legislative work plan like we already did, the inclusionary housing is already on there. It would basically essentially bring it into the conversation today rather than waiting tomorrow. That's all we're asking, just the opportunity to talk about it, for staff to bring it back. And they've already obviously done some research on it, and they have the leverage of house keys to bring along it. I don't think it's going to be a big staff pull to do it. Thank you.
Okay, so Jimmy, would you please read the motion that you think we're passing? Because in the end, it's what is going to get recorded and what you understand it to be.
Okay, well, I'm not going to make the motion.
No, you're not making
tell-
it. You're trying to state it with everybody present to say whether or not what you're saying is what they intend.
So what I'll do is I'll repeat this back as the direction you're giving me, if the council votes to do this. One is that we will adopt a resolution amending the budget for fiscal year 21-22 for the Los Arroyos Fund in the amount of $100,800 in each fiscal year for 22 and 23. That's
okay.
one.
That's item B. Okay, and you're including that in this motion.
Item A is direction for staff to return with the PHLA recommendations to include use of PHLA funds to assist the Housing Trust Fund operationally. Or I'm sorry, financially, sorry, not operationally, financially. The third item would be direction from council to staff to return to council with a discussion on corporate and residential linkage fees as a possible financial solution to the Housing Trust Fund. Those are the three things I understand.
Okay, is that what everybody understands? Thank you. Okay, roll call vote.
Councilmember Almaderis,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco,
No.
Councilmember Hilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Leroy Munoz,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar,
Yes.
and Mayor Blinkley.
Yes. All right, passes 6-1. Moving on to 10.4. Council discussion regarding a potential policy for receiving donations for display at city facilities. And Bryce, you're giving this report too?
Yes, Mayor. So on your screen should be the PowerPoint. So we give some background. September 13th, 2021, the 150th anniversary celebrate committee presented the time capsule and was displayed at the council chambers. This gift was ultimately rescinded, but as a result of that, on September 20th, council initiated a future agenda request for a possible policy for accepting gifts and donations.
I'm sorry, Bryce, but your screen is still on the regular PowerPoint menu.
Okay, let's see what's going on. How about now?
We can see it, but the notes are still there in case.
Okay. Let me see.
But there are no notes. It's empty. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, there's nothing. There's none. So again, the September 20th, council initiated a future addenda request for a possible policy for accepting gifts and donations. intended to be displayed publicly at city facilities. So this agenda item is returned to council for discussion of council's interest in creating that policy. Research has not found a sample policy that's specific to receiving unsolicited donations for items for display. We did find several public art policies, but usually that's when the city is actually soliciting a specific piece of public art. We did find general donation policies as well, usually involve the administration and the back end of accepting and processing that donation. We did find some policies that do discuss some conditions of donations generally. So a few had requirements that they be consistent with the city's vision, mission, strategic goals, operational plans, etc. And then there were others that had prohibitions against certain items of controversial nature. So if the content was illegal, discriminatory, religious or political elements to it, those were also in a couple of policies banned, similar to some of the policies that we have recently passed and presented. Currently, for public art, for donations of art and public display, we do have a current practice that's to be presented to the Arts and Culture Commission and then City Council for acceptance. But ultimately, the components of a policy is at the discretion of the City Council. So recommendations for council to have the discussion of its interest in adopting a gift receiving policy for donations to be displayed at city facilities and to provide any direction to staff. That completes the presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Bryce. All right, Peter, you want to go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, just two factors I kind of see as I think through this, and again, using the example of what happened last year as kind of the model in my mind. I think it's a two-step process. It's the one, it's the acceptance, and then two, it's the what do we decide to do with this? Because I want to make sure that just by virtue of accepting an item, we're not committing to displaying it. We're not committing to, putting it in a certain place or keeping it up for a certain amount of time. So I think as we consider a policy, if that's the direction we want to go, I think it has to be, one, a discussion of what are the criteria we use for accepting it, and then two, what are the criteria we use for deciding whether or not to display it. So just wanted to throw that out there as a foundational item for consideration.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Armendariz.
Thank you. If we could take a step back, I originally made the motion about this for discussion, and my language specifically was about an equity and inclusion policy, and it was for our boards and commissions and for receiving of gifts. And so I don't see any of that language or any information about that on here.
Yes, Councilmember Armendariz, if I can respond, sorry, Mayor. So there's two different motions that were made that evening for initiated items. One is on the policy for displaying items at city facilities, and the other is the inclusionary and equity policy for city's boards, commissions, and committees. That is being brought to the, I believe, the next council meeting on the 7th.
It's on the preliminary agenda that was released today, item 10.2.
So that will be discussed at the next council meeting. So we did capture both of those initiated items.
Okay, so since they're separated, I would like for us, if possible, to hold off on adopting something or looking further into it until we have an equity and inclusion policy for the city. Thanks.
Okay, any other council member comments before I go to the public? Okay, Ty, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Mayor, I do not see any raised hands, nor did I receive any public comments prior to the meeting.
Okay, so seeing no audio comments, public comment is now closed. So it's back to Councilmember Tovar. Do you want to go ahead and say something?
Thank you, Mayor. In respect to Councilwoman Armendariz's original request, I mean, is there a reason why we can't hold off and have that large discussion all at once?
They're two separate items. I didn't even see them as connected. Staff has always had them showing as separate. They've been on our council matrices as separate items all up until now. So it's hard when you find out about something when the item is already now being presented. So I understood them to be separate things. One was accepting a gift that's going to be on display that nobody really understood the process that it went through, because it was a unique situation. It's never happened in the 150 years. And none of us had anything to do with how it all, it was a ball that got dropped, you know, by a different administration, so to speak. And so my understanding was we were trying to address, which is what I thought was Councilmember Armendaris's request, a policy for how we can accept something that goes on display. We accept gifts from sister cities all the time. You accept things. We accept grant money to do stuff, and we do stuff. But for items on display, items that are going to be on display to city facility, we don't have a policy. And that's what this was supposed to address and count. And it's now on the agenda, and staff is asking for direction on what that policy should be. And it's not tied to anything on the separate agenda item that's coming at the next meeting.
I think that an equity and inclusion policy, if we're able to pass one that's, you know, equitable and robust, would set the framework, set the baseline for us to move on with policies like this, with accepting gifts. It would give us, you know, like basically a rubric that we can follow, and that our different commissions and committees could follow, and staff, when it comes to accepting gifts and things that will be on public display, right? That's why I'm thinking and hoping that we can revisit this after talking about the equity and inclusion policy.
Yeah, council needs to opine here, because I don't see the connection. I don't see how you couldn't give direction on one and still have it follow whatever we do with at the next meeting will apply however we say it applies at the next meeting. This is just what policy should something have to go through in order to be on display in a city facility? That's what this is, because right now it doesn't even say it has to go before a commission and there should be a public hearing, at least one public hearing on something that's going on display. Mm-hmm. Councilmember Bracco?
Yeah, I don't see any problem with putting it off until after we do the other policy. I don't think it makes one difference one way or the other.
Okay, Councilmember Hilton.
Yeah, I would support putting it off for the other policy, because to me, they are two items. I just looked over the council matrix, and you're right, they were listed separately. You know, to me, they're going to end up combining and being the same, because as a gift, just as a person, you know, I mean, accepting gifts is going to be based on equity and inclusion, especially when it's displayed for all of us. So I feel that they are going to be intertwined eventually. So putting it off until we meet next Monday to discuss the other one would be a good idea. Thank you.
Councilmember Marks?
No, I think Councilmember Hilton said it correctly. I was just going to ask Councilmember Armendaris that basically what she's saying is that for any gift that the city gets or receives, it has to have diversity and be inclusionary. Is that what you're saying?
If it's going to be on display.
Is that what you meant, Councilmember?
I think Councilmember Marks, what you said originally.
So any gift, or is it just what Mayor Blankley said, only if it's on display? Which one is it?
If you go back,
I think as a city, we have to have a high level, right? We have to have a high level, a higher standard than us as individuals, if we're going to accept something on behalf of our entire city. So yeah, I would say accepting a gift, display it or not. Yeah.
But that wasn't the only problem with that, council member, is that's not what the council approved to agendize. If you go back and watch the meeting, it was to agendize receiving gifts that are to be on display.
Yeah, if I could jump in, I think that's correct, because I mean, we could receive a gift from anybody. I mean, I'm making it up. It could be from our sister city, Tacomachi.
Yeah.
They send something over here, and you know, obviously a gift may or may not, you know, represent all cultures that we have here or all points of view or whatever, but the point is, I think the act of receiving is different from the act of displaying. So anybody can, want to give us a gift that may reflect just one culture or whatever, and that's fine. We can discuss that, and then having a separate policy that looks at, okay, is this gift that we are now displaying, does that meet the criteria we have for the diversity and inclusion? So I think they're two separate things. That's why I said at the beginning, and I still believe that.
Okay. Councilmember Marks, is your hand still raised?
No, I just raised it again because I agree with Councilmember Larome Munoz. You never know what gift you're going to get from, like you said, a certain group of people. It could be a Native American group, and maybe it is specializing in something from their background. Do we not accept it from them because it doesn't include everyone? I do see this as two separate issues. What you display and what you accept.
Okay, Councilmember Armendariz, you have another comment?
Yeah, so that's not what equity and inclusion means, but it doesn't mean that something has to represent everyone. But I think that's why we need a policy first, right? So that we have a framework to follow. And we're jumping into the discussion now, and I know it's on the agenda, but like staff said, there's nothing, there aren't policies like this for us to follow. So I think it merits the time that we need to create our equity and inclusion policy so that we have, a baseline from where to go.
Okay.
Mayor, could I add something real quick?
Yes, please.
I think this is going to be tough for staff. And the reason why I say that is I don't want to set us up for failure to produce something that you're not looking for. The item on March 7 is just, and I'll read it verbatim, but it did come out of the council initiated, was to discuss potential equity and inclusion policy for the city's boards and commissions. That is not direction to implement an entire overall equity and inclusion. So I'm afraid that it would be hard for us to link those two. That's not saying council can't change their mind or change what the council initiated item was, but the two that we currently have, I think are difficult for us to line up. So we're going to need help from council to figure out how to do that, if that's what they want, if that's what you want.
It would apply, of course, to the Arts and Culture Commission, right, where a lot of these items come from. Okay.
It would apply to all the boards and commissions. That's what we understood and put on the agenda for March 7th.
Oh, do we still have an Arts and Culture Commission?
Yes.
Okay.
We have an Arts and Culture Commission. We just appointed 2 new people or 3 new people to it, and we still have 1 vacant seat.
Yeah. Well, we appointed folks to other commissions too, and those are dissolving. So I'm a little confused.
Okay, we're talking. You just asked about
I can look it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I would love to see us expand, but we have to start somewhere. And if that's our process for accepting gifts, as it goes through the Arts and Culture Commission, or
well, that's just it. We don't have that. We need to. That's what we need to address. We don't have that yet.
I feel like this is a chicken and the egg conversation. So I'll go with what the majority's wanting to do right now.
Okay, so let's start with what Councilmember Larome Munoz suggested, and let's first of all acknowledge that what we're addressing here is a policy for receiving donations that are intended or requested to be displayed at city facilities, so that this isn't about accepting a gift from a particular group or culture that's not meant to be on display. At issue is what came up with the time capsule, which was something that was going on display in council chambers that didn't have its own public hearing or process. So why don't we start with that and discuss what direction we would want to give staff, or what should be included in a policy. For example, if staff is approached with something that is meant to go on display in a city facility, would the procedure be to start at the Arts and Culture Commission, get a recommendation from them first, and then it comes on to council? So you have 2 public hearings, 2 opportunities for the public to be able to give an opinion on what the item is and where it should go and what it means.
Yes, I
No.
guess you could. Yes, I mean.
Do you have a
that-
different
that makes
idea? I
sense.
mean, what would be your idea? How to start?
I think, well, I would defer to Councilmember Armandaris. You know, where do you think we should start with this? I know you said the Arts and Cultural Commission. Is that okay with you?
I think it is fitting. But if it's like, you know, there's other gifts, and I think those can be accepted in a different way, like our sister cities, like but if it's from an outside organization, a civic organization, a, you know, a loosely organized community group, then I think we have to have a starting point. And if that's the Arts and Culture Commission, I don't see anywhere else that would be more fitting that we already have established.
So maybe if it's a gift that represents all of Gilroy, or is supposed to, then it should represent every culture in Gilroy.
No,
Does that make sense?
I don't. So if it's representing Gilroy's Portuguese heritage, then it should represent Gilroy's Portuguese heritage. I think that's fine, and that's great. That's not that wouldn't be something not equitable or inclusive, right? But there's yeah.
See, that's where the problem's going to come in. If you say they all have to be equitable and inclusive, and then you get a gift that represents just the Portuguese culture, then it's not. You know, do you really want to be that stringent in the wording of this?
Well, that's why that's not what equity and inclusion means. It doesn't.
Okay, then you
it
need
doesn't
to-
mean that you can't. Doesn't mean that you can't highlight one culture.
So it sounds like that's a discussion for the diversity and inclusion policy.
Right.
But in terms of the actual process of deciding how or when to display a gift, I think it starts with, my recommendation is, it starts with the Arts and Cultural Commission. They review it in a public hearing. They make a recommendation to City Council. City Council has a public hearing to discuss, hear from the public, and ultimately make a decision. So I see it as procedurally a two-step process, and that process will be informed by the diversity and inclusion policy that we're going to come up with.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, because you could, I mean, if you wanted to exempt gifts from sister cities from this, you know, that you could do that and just say that sister city gifts go wherever we have room for them. They're in that cabinet, you know, there, and you could exempt that. But this way, going to arts and culture and then to council, and that would be, to me,
Public
the way we
hearing,
should
yeah.
start. And then at the next meeting, we're going to define what type of diversity, equity, and inclusion
Exactly,
we
yep.
want to apply to all of our boards and commissions.
Correct.
So they will have that as a policy before they're hearing anything. So is that agreeable to people?
That's agreeable to me.
Okay, so okay, then
That's
is that
something
the
I could also
direction?
support.
Okay, great.
I
So-
like us focusing on the procedural. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So then, Jimmy, if that's clear to you, then that's going to be what I'm going to ask for a motion for right now with that direction. Okay.
And I would, well, let me first ask, City Administrator, is that clear before I make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So then with that, I will make a motion that be the recommended procedure, that any gift presented to the city for public display first be considered by the Art and Culture Commission at a public hearing, a recommendation made to the city council at which will have a public hearing, accept public comment, and make a decision as to displaying or not the gift. And that decision will be informed by the diversity and inclusion policy that's forthcoming.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Oh, great. Okay, so we have a motion, a second, and Councilmember Romanos, does that exclude gifts from sister cities, or do you want sister city gifts to go through that process?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think that we
I'm trying to
already display them without that kind of
Yeah.
discussion. I think those are in a special category, so I would exempt sister city gifts. Yes.
All right, is that okay, Councilmember Marks?
That's fine with me.
Is your seconded? Okay. And
Yes.
Councilmember Armandaris, is that okay with?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's fine.
okay. Okay, good. Then let's take a roll call vote. Wait, did I go to public? Yeah, I went to public hearing on this. Yes, okay.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Almaderas,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Leroy Munoz,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar,
Yes.
and Mayor Blankley.
Yes. Okay, thank you all. That just makes it easier. So we go into the next meeting now focusing on what the other policy, the other part is. Okay, item 11. 11.1, report on catalytic converter thefts. Captain Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go. Decided to start my video. If we could do a share screen, I have a quick PowerPoint. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present on this topic. So by now, everybody probably at least knows someone who's had their catalytic converter stolen. And really, since the pandemic, the numbers have skyrocketed. So what I want to do is I just want to talk to you real basically what a catalytic converter is, why people steal them, some of the challenges that we have in law enforcement to enforce these thefts, and go over what individuals can do to help prevent or discourage these thefts. And lastly, I just want to touch on what the police department's doing. Okay, so what is a catalytic converter? Very simple terms. It's a emission control device, and it's been on the car, every car since most cars since the 1970s. It's generally located right on the underside of a vehicle between the engine and the exhaust pipe. And really how it works is heated gas gets pushed through the converter through these honeycomb type chambers that are coated in these precious metals. And the chemical reaction between these metals removes up to 50% of these harmful emissions. So why are they being stolen? So really what's driving these thefts is the market. So I mentioned these precious metals. There's platinum, palladium, and rhodium. These metals aren't just used in catalytic converters, but in the production of musical instruments and a lot of dental work like bridges and crowns, just because they're very resistant to corrosion. And we're talking just minuscule amounts in these catalytic converters, but the market value has gone through the roof, especially over the last 5 years. So platinum hovers about $1,000 per ounce, and it's been pretty consistent over the last few years. Palladium, 5 years ago was $800 an ounce, and right now it's just about $2,400 an ounce. And then of rhodium, about 2 years ago, it was $2,500 an ounce. And in April of 2021, rhodium spiked almost $29,000 per ounce. And currently it's $17,000 per ounce. On top of the market for these precious metals, the amount of thefts have also increased because the amount of thefts and supply chain issues have made them desirable on the resale market. So you have let's say a 2000 Honda, and you get your catalytic converter stolen, you probably don't have full insurance, or there's a good chance you're not going to carry full insurance. And so to replace that, I mean, it could be thousands of dollars. And so, a lot of people look to get these replaced on the resale market. And thieves can get anywhere from $50 to $800 for a single converter. Some of the issues we have in law enforcement, well, number one, it's difficult to enforce because you really have to be at the right place at the right time. these thefts often happen at night. They're planned out, and areas that they know that there's little chance they're going to get caught. And another reason is they're very proficient. They can steal a catalytic converter within minutes, sometimes under a minute, and they usually work in pairs, so it's not unusual to have a lookout once, especially if the person's out there jacking up the car, the other person goes under, cuts the converter out or unbolts it, and while they're doing that, the other person stands watch, and you can go on the internet and watch these videos. I mean, sometimes it's 40 seconds. They're not serialized catalytic converters. So if we get somebody with 2 catalytic converters in the backseat of their car, it's really hard to bring somebody to justice because there's no way to trace it. You don't know if they're stolen. So they have to give you a story and say, well, a friend gave them to me. Without any serialization, we don't have any way to really prove that. A lot of people don't report their catalytic converter thefts just because maybe they don't have insurance, or maybe it's a vehicle that's been parked on the street for months and they don't realize it's even stolen. And another challenge we have is a lot of the thieves are not from Gilroy. They're from all over the area. So the people that we've caught have been from San Jose area. A lot of these theft rings are Central Valley. We don't have a lot of linkage to Gilroy that we've confirmed yet. So take a look at some stats. So if you look at this chart, from 2019 to 2021, there's a 4,200% increase. So we went from in 2019, we had 4. 2021, we had 172. That's a 341% increase in 1 year from 20 to 21. And over the last 6 months, we averaged 14.5 stolen per month. And let me stress, these are the ones that we know of that are reported. So this is not isolated to Gilroy. It's not even a state issue. This is a national issue. California does lead the nation in the amount of catalytic converter thefts. And nationwide, there's been about a 300% increase from the first 6 months of 2021 as compared to 2020. You take a look at San Diego County, and I think they had about a 450% increase in 1 year. So what can we do? So obviously, if you can park in a garage, then people have a harder time stealing your catalytic converter, but a lot of our population community they don't have a garage or that luxury. So if you can park in a well-lit area with regular regular passing traffic, that can decrease the chance of theft. You can install video cameras. That helps us. It's not just a deterrent, but maybe it will give us some leads to follow up on. We encourage people to work with their neighbors to monitor each other's property and report suspicious activity and crimes in progress by calling 911. We also encourage people, if they can, serialize their catalytic converter, have their license plate or at least part of their VIN etched in to the converter. So this might not prevent a theft, but it can help us with our investigation, and it makes it harder to sell and easier for us to try to hold people accountable. Also, another option people are doing is they're purchasing a cage or a cover that gets welded under their car to prevent or protect their catalytic converter, to act like a shield. And those have been pretty successful. As far as what the police department is doing, of course, we're actively patrolling the neighborhoods and other hotspots, such as dealerships and vehicle yards, places where a lot of target vehicles might be at one point. Our anti-crime team is taking the lead on catalytic converter theft. So we have one point of contact for our investigations, and they're going through our reports and analyzing the data to see if there's any follow-up we can do. We have open dialogue with our DA's office to help ensure when we do catch these thieves that we have a successful prosecution and working with them. And we're also exploring other options to help deter theft and deter the recycling of these stolen catalytic converters. For example, some cities have partnered with private auto body and repair shops who are willing to engrave the license number or the VIN associated with that vehicle on the catalytic converter's owner. A lot of cities have done this, and it's been very well received. So that's all I have. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
Wow. I was not expecting that. Okay, the order on my screen is Councilmember Tovar, Bracco, Armandaris, and Marks. So go.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Captain Smith, for the work that you're doing. You had mentioned, obviously, things that our residents can do to help prevent this, obviously. But I mean, if somebody's able to steal it within a minute, I mean, there's really not a lot we can do to protect ourselves. But in regarding the engraving equipment, and I know the city of San Jose purchased, their police foundation purchased a couple of those engraving equipments for local auto bodies to have their residents go and get their VIN number and or phone number engraved on their catalytic converter. Do you know what the cost is of that equipment, and is it something that that we've looked into, possibly purchasing that so we can have our residents have their VIN engraved on that?
Yeah, we're exploring all the options. The engraver is actually not that much. It's the time and the ability to get under the car and
Right.
to etch that the license plate. But we're looking at that as an option.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Bracco, yeah.
Yes, engraving really doesn't do much because they can take a piece of sandpaper and basically sand it off. We get calls to tow these cars almost every single day. Most people don't call the police department. I know mine got stolen about 5 years ago, and I just called my insurance company. And for what they get $50 for, my catalytic converter cost $5,000. So, it's costing a lot of money. One of the best ways that we tell our customers is to go down to the local welding shop and have them weld your driver's license number, your name, or something on the catalytic converter. And then if you go to a welding shop too, they can make them pretty hard to get off, by welding chain and under the car and stuff. Because what they do is they have it's called a cat cutter. It's battery operated. They just climb under there and 2 snips and it's off. What they do in Hawaii, I have a friend in Hawaii that owns a recycle center. They're not allowed to take them. And I'm wondering, Jason, is that something we could try to get the county to do countywide, where the recyclers can't accept them? That pretty much ends it right there, because I think these guys are mainly gonna go to the areas where they can get rid of them, where they're gonna steal them. And Jason, also, if you pull over a car and he's got a trunk full of catalytic converters, is it like the plumbing and the wiring used to be, where you can't really do anything because you can't prove that that they're not his?
Well, I'll answer that last question. And we had a case like that where we had somebody with 2 in the back seat, and they said that a friend gave it to them. And we did as much follow-up as we could because they were cut. We had a very good suspicion they weren't legitimately owned. But ultimately, there was nothing we could do because we couldn't trace them back. I know some cities have explored passing an ordinance where you have to be a licensed reseller or have legal ownership paperwork to be able to possess one. I know that's been an option, but it's a challenge. So what you said about the engraving, I agree with you. Somebody can get that and sand it off. Just something's better than nothing. I think welding the numbers on, like you said, is a great idea. I also have seen some cities encourage you to use high temperature paint and paint them like a fluorescent color. So somebody crawls under a car, they might not want to take it because it's going to bring a lot of attention to them. And then when they take it to the a recycler or whoever they're going to take it to, they might not want to take a bright pink or bright orange catalytic converter just for the attention it brings.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Armendariz?
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned secondary markets. So does that, are you talking like Craigslist or like chop shops that sell this stuff?
Yeah, or just an auto repair shop that gets people, you know, towed in that need one. And because of the supply chain issues, they might decide to get that, you know, from somebody that's stolen one. And so that's created a secondary market to where before you bring in your car that had a missing catalytic converter and they have one in stock or it's readily ordered. Now there's such a supply and demand for them. That's what's created that secondary market. So it could be Craigslist, it could be, you know, an auto body shop.
Is there, are there law enforcement programs that you can talk about that are trying to stem that?
Yeah, San Jose, the San Jose Police Department and the DA's office in December of 21 had a 6-month investigation where they, it was called CATS, I forget the name of it had a very catchy name to it, but really that's what they did. They really went into deep down into who's buying these, who's driving the market. So they arrested store owners, people that were buying these stolen from people who had stole them. They got over 1,000 catalytic converters. They recovered weapons, tens of thousands of dollars in cash, and a lot of them were from the area.
Okay. So if one of us is at one of these shops and we suspect something like that's happening, what do you think we should look out for? And are there things we should be reporting if we see or interacting with an auto repair shop that is doing something like this?
Yeah, I definitely notify our police department if it's happening in Gilroy, because that's really, we're looking for the break. We're trying to stop it where, you know, stop the reason people are doing this. So if somebody brings in a catalytic converter to a recycle shop, please call the police, let us know, and then we could follow up from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Marks?
Well, I think I have an answer for you that would somehow help it. Chula Vista Police Department just sponsored a bill. It's SB 919, and Senator Jones is the lead senator on this bill, and they're debating it and right now on the floor. I think it would behoove all of us to get in touch with Senator Laird and encourage him to support this bill and do a really good lobbying effort. I'm not going to bore you with all the details of this bill, but what they're talking about mainly is having the car manufacturers put the VIN number on the catalytic converter. And basically you cannot sell, or a metal recycler cannot buy a catalytic converter without one of these VIN numbers on it. And if they have to have very good documentation on who sold it to them, where they got it from, and they're also talking about really stiff fines. So once again, that's SB 919, and it might not solve every problem 100%, but if we can put a dent into this by getting this passed into law, it certainly will make a dent into these people who are buying these illegal catalytic converters. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We personally did the last option there because we have a 2012 Prius that our daughter now drives, and that is one of the hot ones, and she moved to San Francisco. We purchased the product, $180 for the product, for something that if we had to replace was going to be about $3,000. So, and that has worked, and she has to park on the streets of San Francisco every single day and wherever she can find a spot. So if it were able to be removed, I think it would be gone by now. So this protector thing, it's a shield. It's called cat security that goes under there. And a friend of ours was able to put it on because he has 2 Priuses and did it himself. So I don't know if it's I don't know which catalytic converters are being stolen. I know Prius is a popular one because they're so easy to remove. And this particular product really nips that in the bud. So I just wanted to share that information.
Prius is and thank you for sharing. The Prius is very popular because there's 2 catalytic converters, and you only have to make 1 cut, and then it's unbolting 2 bolts. So it's relatively easy, and you get 2 for 1. That's why it's so popular.
So
Another other vehicles that are popular are the vans and trucks, just because they have high clearance and they don't need to be jacked up.
Right.
But a lot of people are doing what you just said, and it's actually a very good investment, especially if you have
Very
or
good
like a
investment.
Prius.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Moving on to update on in-person city council board commission meetings in March.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all recall, on January 10th and subsequently in February, the council adopted a resolution to authorize virtual meetings for 30 days. At the first instance in January, the question was posed as to how long were you committing to doing these meetings, and we said at this point we would do it through March unless something has changed. And I'm sure, as you all know, something has changed. It is expected that the county's mask mandate will be eliminated on March 2nd, which is just a little bit later this week. And that way, Santa Clara County would now be the last county in California to have rescinded its mask mandate. This was based on 3 factors as determined by Dr. Sarah Cody, the county's health officer. One was the vaccination rate above 80%, and 2, the amount of daily positives for the COVID virus, more particularly the variant, I'm sorry, that is now below 550 per day. So actually it's 2, it's not 3, I'm sorry. And so with that, we expect mask mandates will be lifted here in just a few days, and that's a significant change that allows us to return. So I'm essentially informing council that we will not be bringing you another resolution to extend 30 days at the March meeting, and your March meeting on March 7th will be back in person, and we will do the same for boards and commissions as well. So we'll try it again, and hopefully there's not another variant out there that we're scared of or worried about, but it'd be another step to get back to normalcy. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have, but that is primarily a status update for you. And yeah, go ahead.
Quick question. No, that's great news. Will we still be required to wear a mask at these meetings?
No, actually, that is the other component of the mask mandate. But I want to give you a few qualifiers. It is recommended. You are not required. We won't have the mask police there. And we will not be asking for vaccination status as well of any participant or anything. So it's about as close to normal as we can get. But if you want to still wear a mask, we encourage you to do so. But we won't be giving you a hard time if you don't.
Thank you.
Welcome. The second part of my report that I don't have on there is I did want to let council know that I had a city administrator town hall last Thursday, the 24th. I did that virtually, and that was a lot of fun. And I got a lot of the same questions that you get, except I get to answer them a little bit different than you do. But we had 27 or so participants, about 30 questions, and we did do Spanish translation. So I will tell you the one disappointment I had in it is I didn't get a single question from our Spanish speaking community. So I'm going to keep telling them to show up, because we're there for them. We're translating. And so if you know people who say that we don't translate and they're not welcome, well, we're there for them. So please encourage folks to show up. Had a great translator. She was very helpful. And so I'll do that again every quarter. And the questions that I get asked are the same thing that you get asked at council meetings: Starbucks going in at First Street, the ice rink, housing, you name it, all the same. And so it was fun, and I enjoyed it. So I want to do it again, and I want to thank the community for joining me. And I'll keep doing that virtually, because I think that's the most convenient for that type of meeting. So I wanted to let council know I thought that was a success. That concludes my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. City attorney's report.
I have no report. We're not doing any city attorney virtual meetings this month.
Okay, yay. All right, we don't have anything in closed session, so we are adjourning at 9 o'clock. All right.
Bye, everyone.
Good
We'll see
night.
everyone in person next time.
That's right. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks all.
Good night.